Chapter 516. William was not afraid of the ferocious barbarian. He punched with both fists. The raging waves collided with the countless bolts of lightning. Boom! The seawater that was mixed with the electric current fell. It was as if it was raining blue light. The sound reverberated in the sky. Countless magical beasts roared. Many sea beasts surfaced from the water and revealed their huge heads to watch the battle. It was as if it was waiting for both of them to suffer heavy injuries before swallowing him whole. The barbarian and William exchanged blows. His bones cracked, but the intense pain did not make him retreat. Instead, he attacked even more fiercely. Water elements gathered on his fists. Not only did they heal his injuries, but they also allowed his fists to explode with endless power. Previously, his fists were ferocious and unparalleled. Now, there was a hint of softness and hardness. But William did not care. He used his strength to prove himself. He did not care what abilities his opponent had. He just needed to use his fastest and strongest fist to attack. He was strong enough to defeat 10 people, and he specialized in using flashy moves. Blackie flapped his wings and roared deafeningly. He wanted to spit out his dragon's breath to help. But William asked Blackie to guard the battlefield and not let other creatures come over. The barbarian in front of him was not a bad person. It could even be said that he was a pitiful person. Not only had he been trapped here for countless years, but he also had to watch the respectable Sea King turn into a monster. He also had to watch his old captain fight with his life on the line. He also had to watch his other brothers go crazy and die. It could be said that, even if he had eaten some kind of life-prolonging treasure to be able to live until now, the fact that he could still speak clearly showed that his willpower was unimaginable. William did not dare to imagine what would happen to him after being trapped here for so many years. Well, unless he was given a virtual gaming cabin that could connect to the internet. But as long as he could overcome his inner demons, the barbarian could become a legendary professional. Prince William was scheming again. For example, if William helped the barbarian get rid of the giant octopus, he might be able to join William's side after overcoming his inner demons. There would be another legendary professional in the City of Dawn, because the barbarian in front of him had a good impression of William. It was worth it. But next, William felt that something was amiss. The barbarian in front of him was getting fiercer and fiercer. The white bones on his fists were already exposed in the air. However, there was no fear in his eyes. Instead, he became more and more excited. Power of the 7 seas. Savage gave a loud shout, and a sky full of water elements surrounded his body, causing his body to become transparent. The prince took a deep breath and decisively activated the power of dawn, causing all of his attributes to soar. 10 minutes. The two of them continued to exchange blows without stopping. Their auras had also reached the peak. Even Old Band had rushed over from the Dawn vessel after sensing the battle aura. His Royal Highness did not allow him to interfere, because he knew that Savage was no match for him. Although this guy's aura was getting stronger and stronger, the strength in his hands was getting smaller and smaller, as if he was having a terminal lucidity. Perhaps this person wanted to die. William would use his fist to fulfill his wish. Bang! Their fists collided. As William took half a step back, he raised his arm to block the downward chop. He immediately punched with his saber, and a large part of the savage's chest caved in. Even the dirty soil on his back was blown away by his energy. His body smashed into the legendary battleship like a cannonball. In the next second, the savage charged out an even faster speed. His feet were connected to the water spout. He used all of his strength to shout, "Strongest! Let me die under your strongest attack." The corners of William's mouth twitched. The middle-level elemental body had a cool-down period of a month. But after dispelling the power of dawn, he still activated the unparalleled sacred thunder. At that moment, lightning flowed around his body like a god. His aura increased again. With the power of thunder, he transformed into a bolt of lightning and charged towards the savage. A punch, the power of thunder. It was like 10 magic cannons had fired a cannonball at the same time. A solid lightning beam hit the surface of the savage's body. Rumble. The savage retreated again. Not only did he smash through the legendary battleship, but he was also embedded in the cliff wall that was 1,000 meters away. Countless rocks fell into the sea. Many magical beasts saw that the savage was embedded in the wall. They leaped up and wanted to devour him. William raised his eyebrows. Even if the savage was going to die, he would be the one to kill him. Why would the magical beast devour him? After all, he would gain experience points. What if he obtained another endowment? But at this moment, the moment the savage opened his eyes, the heaven and earth changed. His eyes were no longer turbid. Instead, they were like a pool of clear water that was as deep as the sea. He took a step forward. 1,000-meter-tall water elemental giant formed in the sky. He stomped heavily on the surface of the sea. Rumble. Countless magical beasts were crushed into meat paste. A few epic sea beasts that were close to the savage perished. Fresh blood dyed the seawater red. But none of the sea beasts dared to take a step forward to devour the flesh and blood that they had been yearning for. The 100-meter cliff behind the savage shattered. The seawater, rocks, trees, and magical beasts within a radius of 10,000 meters floated into the sky. Buzz! Everything in the sky turned into powder. Gulp. Old Band swallowed his saliva. He was a little nervous. The savage had suddenly become a legendary. There might be problems. William raised his eyebrows and gave Old Band a calm look. There was nothing to be afraid of. The most important thing for a man was confidence. That was luck. The savage did not go crazy. He calmly waved his hand and used water elemental energy to form clothes on his body. He walked in front of William and bowed calmly. He said in a deep voice, "Thank you. You're welcome." William did not dodge. If not for William's punch, it would have been difficult for him to break through to the legendary realm. The battle between the two of them had unleashed the unhappiness that Savage had felt for many years. The anger that he had been suppressing for countless years had finally been released from that battle. He had wanted to die, but he had broken through in despair. Instead of saying that he was lucky, it was his willpower that had persisted for many years. Then he looked at the surface of the sea above his head and said, "Are you here to search for the sea god's ruins?" William nodded. "Then go and try." The Sea King was right. "We came early. Perhaps you were the luckiest ones." The savage had an emotional expression. After he had entered the legendary realm, his soul had improved. He was no longer a lunatic. William smiled. No one knew what he was thinking. He asked, "You don't intend to inherit the sea god's inheritance?" The savage shook his head and said, "I'm not interested." The Sea King was not interested in inheriting the god's inheritance. Only those who could advance to the legendary realm would not want to inherit the god's inheritance. Only those who could never reach the legendary realm would make such a decision. But the pressure from the dark creatures was too great, so the human empires came up with the god's inheritance plan. They wanted the human race to have many sages in a short period of time to deal with the darkness invasion. "All right, tell me the location. I'll send someone there." William nodded. The savage looked at William in surprise. He knew that William was a thunder element professional, so he was not interested in inheriting the sea god's inheritance. Then he told everyone the detailed route. William pondered and said, "Old Band, let Douglet and Jack enter the sea god's palace. See if they have the opportunity." "Yes." The space enchanter nodded. He tore apart the space and disappeared in front of them. The savage looked at William, who had not left. He seemed to be on guard against him. He could not help but laugh. It was not a threat, but he found it funny. "Are you afraid that I'll attack your subordinates?" "One must always be vigilant." His Royal Highness nodded. "Such a confident young man is rare even at the end of the Second Era. Why are you so confident?" The savage was in disbelief. He did not know where William got his courage from. William laughed lightly and said, "It's up to you whether you believe me or not. But if you dare to attack, I just need to use my mind. In less than 3 minutes, 2 legendary experts will appear to protect me." Suddenly, the savage felt sour. It was even more sour than a lemon. He did not know whose descendant this half-elf was, but his background was not ordinary. It was no wonder that William was not afraid when he heard that a legendary monster was guarding outside. However, the savage did not want to test William's trump card. He sighed and said, When your two subordinates come out from the sea god's palace, let the space enchanter activate the dimension vortex. I'll go out and stall the sea king. Go back to where you came from. It's not that easy to kill it. You've become a legendary professional. Isn't it better to live well? William frowned. If the Sea King was really a legendary professional who had become a monster, he did not dare to imagine how strong it had become after devouring countless sea beasts over the years. Live? What's the point of living without someone of the same generation? The savage sat on the ground and looked at the sea in deep thought. After he reached the legendary level, he could feel the changes in time. From William's tone, he could tell that the god's continent had changed a lot. William took out a bottle of wine and threw it to the savage. The savage's eyes lit up, and he opened the bottle and gulped down the wine. Then he drank 3 bottles in a row. He could not help but say, "You're right. I've become a legendary professional. I can drink and eat as I please. I don't have a wife yet. Why should I die?" William was also deep in thought. He stopped taking out the food. He wanted to let the savage have a farewell meal so that he could die with a full stomach. In the end, this guy's shamelessness was much lower than he had expected. There should be meat and wine. Give me some more. I haven't had proper food for a long time. I'm a little hungry. The savage was in a good mood, and he stretched out his hand to ask for more food. William threw a lot of food and drinks to the savage. He cursed in his heart, "D*****, I've tricked so many people, but one day I've been tricked. This fellow has lived for so many years. If he wanted to die, he would have died long ago. What a strong desire to live." After the savage finished eating and drinking, he noticed that William was staring at him intently. "What's up?" The savage felt that William was up to no good. "You ate and drank from me. You even became a legendary professional with my help. How much do you think this is?" The savage exclaimed and said, "You're too straightforward. I'm going to pee." Hey, don't pull me. You're already a legendary professional. Help me kill the epic magical beast on the island, and you'll repay half of the favor." The savage pondered for a while and asked, "What about the other half?" "We'll talk about it in the future." "Then let's talk about it in the future." The savage nodded and started to kill the epic magical beasts in this alternate dimension. Chapter 517. The savages had the strongest desire for survival that William had ever seen. Ever since William arrived at this alternate dimension, he had the intention to kill all the epic magical beasts in this alternate dimension. After all, there were 3 islands and a large sea region. There were at least hundreds of epic magical beasts, and they were all captive lambs. There was nowhere for them to escape. It would be a great harvest, not to mention the hundreds of epic magical crystals. Just the nutritious flesh and blood would be enough to nurture a large number of talents. It's shameful to waste resources. Since I've come to this ruin, I'll naturally take everything with me. I won't destroy the sea god's palace, but I can't leave the magical beasts behind to harm the human world. William felt that he had a good reason to attack, and he had the responsibility to protect world peace. William killed the magical beasts with the savages. The former killed the small magical beasts, while the latter stored them in his space ring. Their teamwork was very good. William wore 3 space rings on his fingers, but he had more than 10 spare space rings in his pocket. He could store hundreds of epic magical beasts, let alone 300. It cannot be helped. He had an all-round magical goddess that he kept at home. That was how arrogant she was. Such a massacre of magical beasts would definitely cause the magical beasts in this alternate dimension to become even crazier. At first, the magical beasts fled separately. But as the stench of blood became stronger, and more than 80 epic magical beasts were killed, the chaos of the beast tide began. They joined forces to attack the savages. In fact, it was difficult for ordinary professionals to fight against magical beasts of the same level. This was especially obvious for professionals who were below the Grandmaster level. Because the bodies of the magical beasts were too big, they could store too much magic. But after reaching the epic and legendary levels, when professionals had the elemental body, their combat techniques and recovery abilities would become very powerful. Basically, Other than great dragons, phoenixes, and super magical beasts of the same level would not be a match for intelligent races. Therefore, even if the beast tide appeared and hundreds of epic magical beasts attacked the savages at the same time, it was useless. The difference was too great. In particular, this alternate dimension was filled with seawater. There were so many water elements, so it was the home ground for the water professionals. The savages faced the endless magical beasts. They activated their domain, and the space within a radius of 10,000 meters turned into a vast ocean. The water element energy seemed to have come to life. Wherever the magical beasts charged in, there would be whirlpools or extremely tough chains. The water elements in the sky gathered together and transformed into all kinds of weapons that attacked the magical beasts. Water was formless, and you could turn it into anything you wanted. It could be used to attack or defend. It could be turned into a killing weapon, or it could be turned into layers of waves to block the enemy's attack. Of course, in comparison, the water domain's function was not to kill, but to control. If they were both at the legendary level, the water domain would not be able to form such a powerful attack. With the passage of time, of the hundreds of epic magical beasts, the strongest of them only managed to get within 100 meters of the savages before dying. 2 hours later, all the epic magical beasts in the alternate dimension were wiped out. The thick smell of blood filled the space, causing the remaining low-grade beings to shiver and hide, not making any strange movements. At this moment, waves rose from the sea overhead. The waves under his feet also surged, and the cause of this commotion was the sea god palace hidden in the deep sea. Then a divine aura spread. The waves started to roll to both sides. Or rather, the sea was separated by an invisible force. A few hundred meters below the surface was facing the sea god palace, whose door had been opened. 2 figures appeared, Douglet and Captain Jack. The former held a trident that emitted blue light. It seemed like he had used this item to separate the waves. On the other hand, Captain Jack didn't seem to have inherited anything. He looked depressed and a little unhappy. But when they saw William and the others, they quickly flew over. Douglet laughed and said, "I didn't disappoint you. I really inherited the legacy of the sea god. There are ways to train from the epic level to the main deity level. Even though it's the god path, I can still learn from the sage path. At least, I feel that it should be easy to become a legendary, especially since I have obtained many treasures." Douglet did not finish his sentence because there was a savage beside them. Looking at how tightly Doglit was holding the trident, it might really be some kind of divine artifact. William fell into deep thought. He felt a little sad. Why was it so easy for others to explore the ruins? Back then, he had been tossing and turning because of the Thunder God's legacy. He had gone to the temple of the Thunder God in the Thunder region, but he had not obtained it. Was he the reincarnation of a lucky man? Then he glanced at Captain Jack. His hair was tied with many knots, and there were many strange things tied on it. His skin was a little dark, and he looked like Sparrow. But from his constipated expression, William knew that he had given it to Captain Jack for nothing. But before Jack said anything, Douglet answered for him. Prince Jack actually has obtained a treasure that has the ability to control sea monsters. But it seems that it has been used. Or rather, the sea monster that was controlled by the sea god is not here. He can't sense it at all. When he heard this, William's eyes lit up. He can't sense it now because this is an alternate dimension. Let's go out and try. The savage's mouth twitched. He had also sensed that the treasure might be the thing that controlled the Sea King octopus. He could not help but feel sad for the Sea King octopus. Not only had he become a sea monster, but he was also being reared as a pet. There was nothing more unfortunate than this. Just as they were about to discuss something, crack. For some unknown reason, cracks started to appear in the sea god's palace. The waves under their feet kept rolling. There was no wind, and waves that were tens of meters or even hundreds of meters high were everywhere. Perhaps it was an illusion, but the sea level above their heads started to decrease. The alternate dimension is about to collapse, the savage said when he saw this scene. William was shocked. Perhaps when the two seas merged, the alternate dimension would completely collapse. They had to leave this place now. Let's go back to the Dawn vessel. We'll leave now, William commanded. Everyone and the small black dragon immediately flew back. As a space enchanter, Old Band had sensed that something was wrong. When he saw William and his companions return, he heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly said, "The dimension is about to collapse. We have to leave immediately." William nodded. When the remaining 2,000 sailors were gathered together, the savage volunteered to help. He used a huge bubble to envelop them. In the next moment, thousands of people ascended at the same time. The alternate dimension was collapsing very quickly. Just as the sun and moon on both sides were about to disappear, they finally broke through the gravitational force and entered the seawater above their heads. As Old Band continued to use his space magic, the buzzing spatial fluctuations began to spread out in ripples visible to the naked eye. It seemed that because the alternate dimension was about to collapse, the space vortex that Old Band summoned was too big. Everyone felt a suction force. In the next moment, when they opened their eyes, they were already in the pitch-black deep sea. But at this moment, when William's body emitted light, an enormous deep-sea octopus beast, whose tentacle alone was bigger than thousands of them put together, was actually looking at them from the side. At that moment, everyone held their breaths. Some even peed their pants. It was not that the warriors of the Dawn vessel were not brave. They could not take it anymore. It was too terrifying. The two red eyeballs were almost 1/3 the size of the Dawn vessel. The octopus stared at them. The 18 tentacles around it were like mountains. It was too big. They could not take it anymore. It was hard for them to imagine just how powerful this boundless monster was. The dust dragon was like a frosted eggplant. It transformed into a palm-sized black dragon and quickly hid in William's arms. It did not dare to move. Even the savage, who had become a legendary professional, felt a strong sense of crisis. He could run, but he definitely couldn't beat the opponent. He was a water-type legendary professional. However, the gigantic sea monster in front of them was a transformation of a legendary master named the Sea King. When Captain Jack saw the sea monster, his eyes lit up. He quickly stood up and held a small octopus doll in his hand. He shouted, "I order you to drag us to the surface." The sea monster was very obedient. Or rather, it did not attack them just now because the food in front of it had the aura of its master. When the giant octopus saw the octopus doll, it obediently lowered its head and respectfully used one of its tentacles to drag everyone to the surface. When they saw the sky that they had not seen for a long time, they quickly flew up into the sky. Many of them looked down at the huge shadow in the water and took a deep breath. It was too King scary. Even the prince heaved a sigh of relief with lingering fear in his heart. He couldn't help but look at Captain Jack. "Yes, this treasure of yours seems to be much stronger than Doglets. This is a super sea monster that is close to the saint level." Jack looked better. He was not afraid of the sea monster. In fact, he felt like he was looking at his kitten. But he still said, "My sea monster is Prince William's sea monster. From now on, I will forever guard the sea for the City of Dawn." Yes. William nodded with a conflicted expression. "Let your pet stay near the sea of the City of Dawn. Don't let go too close. Don't let it eat indiscriminately. Don't let it release its aura. Otherwise, the citizens of the City of Dawn will not have fish to eat." "Understood, Prince William. I feel that with this big guy, we can do something." Captain Jack laughed as if he had a good idea. "Ahem, let's talk about it in the future." The corners of William's mouth twitched. William had never stopped thinking about becoming a pirate. In addition, he had seized a super sea monster. Perhaps he would really embark on the path of becoming a pirate. But then again, it seemed possible. He had been a pirate in his previous life. In this life, he was too famous and could be easily recognized. So, he decided not to do such a thing. But with the continuous updates of the game, after a period of time, the 7 continents would get closer to each other rapidly. When the 7 continents got closer to each other, the number of sea routes in the endless sea would increase. Various naval battles would become common. Originally, William was afraid that the City of Dawn would get into trouble. But now, there was a sea monster that was close to a sage level. TSK. It would be a waste if he did not become a pirate. He could even rob the warships of the human empires from other continents. As for after the mission here was over, William immediately focused on Odin's avatar. It was not a problem with the Asgard that he had built. It was the beginning of the Infinite War. It was about to begin. The dragon race started to wreak havoc. Various kidnappings of princesses occurred. Ahem. The angel army of the Seraphin also appeared. The city of Dawn was as stable as a mountain. William did not need to make any arrangements. They just had to follow the plan. But Odin could make use of this chaotic world to rise. Chapter 5:18. The savage left. He did not leave any way of contacting William. He did not even take the space ring that William had given him. Just like that, he transformed into a huge wave and traveled into the distance. He said that the god's continent was huge, and he wanted to explore it and experience freedom. His Royal Highness did not have much reluctance or unwillingness to part with them. He did not think that the savage had to listen to him just because he had saved the savage. He had always maintained a trace of respect for the professionals who were stronger than him, even though he had a stronger background than many legendary big shots. This was especially the case for the savages, who had lived for 3 eras in the sea god's ruins without dying. Even if their will, and thoughts were not completely solidified, it was not something that William could subdue with just words. Fortunately, William had helped him become a legendary professional. In addition, William had good looks. Both of them had a friendship level of more than 300 points. Even if they could not become friends in the future, they would not become enemies. Next, Old Band would build a teleportation portal and connect it with the teleportation portal of the City of Dawn. After everyone left, he dismantled the teleportation portal and opened a temporary space tunnel. He slowly slipped back to the City of Dawn. He was a space enchanter. If a space enchanter was here, he could easily tear a stable space tunnel that could allow thousands or even tens of thousands of people to travel tens of thousands of kilometers. However, these people paled in comparison to Moses. When William wanted to attack the Beast Castle, Moses said that it would not be a problem for him to teleport 200,000 people. The difference between 10,000 and 200,000 people was 20 times. This was enough to prove the super strength of the goddess of magic. William returned to the City of Dawn and distributed the epic magical beast meat to the officers of the Dawn Army. He wanted to use the magic crystals to make some treasures, such as magic staffs, or to embed them on weapons to increase their combat power. However, he thought about it carefully. The quality of the equipment was not important. A few more epic professionals were better than anything else. Especially when the endless war was imminent, he felt a rare sense of crisis. He distributed the hundreds of magic crystals to some grandmaster professionals, hoping that they could use the power of the magic crystals to break through to the epic level. He distributed the remaining blood fruits to the elders who had followed him for many years. Then, he started to systematically plunder to increase the prosperity of the City of Dawn and the unique coexistence of many races. During the invasion of the darkness, the City of Dawn had helped the Winged Tribe defeat the dark creatures. Furthermore, the City of Dawn had kidnapped hundreds of thousands of Winged Tribesmen under the pretext that this place was dangerous. Thanks to little Angel Shien's help, these harpies didn't harbor any ill intentions towards him. Don't ask why the Seraphin were tied to the City of Dawn. A few years before the start of the Fourth Era, the harpies were their father, and the humans had no choice but to step aside. Establishing a relationship with them was more important than anything else. A month after he had returned to the City of Dawn, the players gradually revealed smiles of hard work. There was nothing wrong with that. It had already been half a year since the Darkness invasion started, and their attacks were starting to weaken. They would soon be able to launch a counterattack on the Devil's Den and enjoy the fruits of victory. Almost all the players thought so. However, on that day, all the grand duchies on the 7 continents that were still facing the threat of the dark creatures had rainbow light pillars appear in the sky above their heads. An army of over 10 million angels appeared on the 7 continents. The lowest level of the angels was advanced, and there were thousands of epic archangels. The angels, who were clad in silver armor and had wings on their backs, did not care about the human grand duchies or the players. They destroyed all the dark creatures effortlessly. The final battle of the Second Darkness Invasion ended with the baptism of the Holy Light. The players did not understand the outcome. But then again, this seemed to be within his expectations. The main storyline mission of the players had been tricked once again. It was the same in every version, and some players had gotten used to it. Many grand duchies that had given up their lands were filled with regret. The kings and nobles of the grand duchies did not have time to think too much. After the angel army killed hundreds of millions of dark creatures, they used a tyrannical method to occupy the land that had been invaded by the dark creatures. What? Did you say that this was your land? Sorry, I only see endless dark creatures here. The land that I have conquered belongs to me. This was similar to what Odin had done. Or rather, Odin had dared to do that because William knew that the winged people would do the same thing. For a moment, the world changed, and the winds and clouds were unpredictable. The secret forces on the 7 continents gradually surfaced. Many human grand duchies did not perish, but because of their constant retreating, their lost lands were occupied by the winged people. In the end, only the capital was left. Sooner or later, the human empires would be doomed. The human empires, who were supposed to intervene, did not have the imposing manner that they had in the Third Era. They merely denounced the winged people and left the matter unsettled. Because no one dared to fight for food with an evil dragon that had been in hibernation for countless years. This evil dragon had been in hibernation for too long. It had been so long that ordinary people had forgotten that such a race existed. But the leaders of the various intelligent races would never forget it. The world has changed. William lay on the balcony of the 2nd floor. When he looked at the massacre plains in the south, many winged people were in the sky. They were pointing at the massacre plains and the black lava dukedom. Many angels were also looking at the city of dawn, but they did not come over. They waved their hands and claimed the massacre plains that belonged to the city of dawn as their territory. That seemed to be the case. Fortunately, the resources on the massacre plains had been taken away by William, so he did not care. And how much wealth had the Harpies, who had been hiding since the First Era until now, managed to accumulate? No one could say for sure. After all, the Sky Castle above their heads, as well as the angel world hidden within the Sky Castle, had never been revealed to the public. But those nearly 100 saint-level angels, could it be a joke? When the winged people revealed their ambition, William did not even dare to make a sound. Not only him, humans, elves, dwarfs, dragons, all the intelligent races in the gods' continent did not dare to touch the beard of this giant dragon. Half a month after the Darkness Invasion, the winged people occupied the land of 3 human kingdoms in the legendary continent. William's fingers tapped on the armrest of the rocking chair. He muttered to himself, "The infinite war is about to begin. The Darkness Invasion will erupt. At that time, chaos would descend. The gods would use their avatars to perform miracles in the human world. No matter who it was, no one would be able to escape unscathed. What will happen to the City of Dawn? It can only plunge into this chaotic war. Without destruction, there can be no construction. It can only survive in the war between countless forces. Sigh. The good days are coming to an end. Tomorrow, I'll look for little Angel Shein to make a good impression on me." William sighed. It was time to sell his body and face. Although the winged people were not as friendly as the human empires, he was confident in his looks. He would be able to make a good impression on them. The arrival of the angels. The large-scale migration of the winged people was like a new race in the gods' continent. In the past, the winged people hid in the deep mountains and forests. They hid even deeper than the elves. But now, with the appearance of the angels, the winged tribes appeared in front of everyone. There were not many winged people. Their numbers were only 2 to 3 times that of the elves. But it did not matter. The winged people could live together with the humans regardless of their status. The winged people were not inferior to the humans. Furthermore, the winged people were not barbarians. They only had a small ambition. They wanted to become the masters of the Fourth Era. After the Darkness Invasion ended, the players were unhappy. But now that the powerful winged people had appeared on the continent, many players became excited. They had missions to complete. As the winged people were too few in numbers, they wanted to expand their power. For example, they wanted to return farmland to forests, kill magical beasts, and exterminate dark creatures. But these missions were left to outsiders. As such, William made use of his relationship with little angel Chien to get close to her. He obtained many missions and passed them to the players. But because of the winged people's actions, they reduced the living environment of the dragon race. This caused the dragon's rebellion to occur in advance. Meanwhile, at the peak of a tall mountain 100 kilometers away from the City of Dawn, the space started to distort. In a few seconds, a space grand magus walked out of it. Then, two more enchanters appeared. The former was the ninth elder of the magic sanctuary, Irene. The latter was a fire enchanter. There were 3 legendary professionals. Next, a total of 36 epic professionals walked out. Half of them were not enchanters. They were true warriors. Not all the mercenaries in the mercenary palace were close combat professionals. There were many enchanters and great enchanters. But it was enough to tell. It was not easy for the Magic Sanctuary to gather these top epic close combat professionals. But in terms of aura, the close combat professionals chosen by the Magic Sanctuary were definitely not weak. The space enchanter was called Dylan. He was the 3rd elder of the Magic Sanctuary. It was rumored that he was close to becoming a sage. He calmly looked into the distance and said in a deep voice, "The prestige of the Magic Sanctuary is not to be challenged." Ever since that person escaped, the Magic Sanctuary has tolerated him for many years. As a neutral power, the City of Dawn has continuously roped in the Temple of Light, the Palace of Darkness, and the Mercenary Guild. Now, he even dared to kill the sacred envoy of the Magic Sanctuary. He's courting death. Irene, is William in the City of Dawn now? Yes, he's in the City of Dawn now. Irene did not dare to be too frivolous in the face of Dylan's questioning. She quickly nodded. Dylan narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of the City of Dawn. Good. Let's kill our way in. The 3 of us will stop the Great Enchanter. The rest of you will kill William in the City of Dawn. If the Blackleaf elves want revenge, the Magic Sanctuary will deal with them. Our god is about to descend. The resurgence of the Magic Sanctuary will be proven with blood. The rest of them looked solemn and shouted. The resurgence of the Magic Sanctuary will be proven with blood. Kill them. The City of Dawn is quite powerful. They even have a legendary enchanter. Let's kill them all. Yes. At the same time, William's hair stood on end. He felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He almost jumped out of the rocking chair. In the next second, Moses appeared beside him. She combed his messy hair and said softly, "Don't worry. I'm here." The prince smiled and turned to look into Moses' eyes. He also said, "There's me too." Chapter 519. A murderous intent descended. The teleportation hull sent out an alarm. The space tunnel had been cut off, and there was no way to seek reinforcements. Countless professionals in the City of Dawn sensed the unfamiliar and murderous aura. William did not need to give the order. Cannons were opened outside the tall city walls. Rangers rushed to the city walls or the archer towers. The soldiers who were training in the barracks were equipped with armor. They flew to the city walls in a short time. More than 100,000 soldiers guarding the city were all in position in just 30 seconds. Burn Cinder, Diablo, Old Leather, Jack, Douglet, Lautner, Chien, and the Blood Moon which had arrived at the city walls. They looked at the uninvited guests from the east. There were 16 epic professionals in the City of Dawn, but there were only 8 of them and a dusk dragon guarding the city. This scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. The civilians and players in the city felt nervous. It was as if the end of the world was coming. In the next moment, Lautner roared, "Fire!" Dozens of magic cannons hidden in the east city walls fired at the distorted space. Dazzling light beams shot out. The power of the magic robe was not comparable to the cannons. But before the sky was filled with flames and thunderous explosions, a space grand magus had already appeared. With a cold expression, he waved his hand and transferred the dozens of energy cannonballs to another dimension. On the other hand, The energy bullets fired by the magic cannons disappeared like duds. It had to be said, space professionals had a great advantage. As long as they appeared on the battlefield, the enemy's defense was almost non-existent. At this moment, the players who were flying to the rooftop saw 3 legendary experts and more than 30 epic professionals charging out of the space tunnel. But they did not charge into the city, not because they had no intention of doing so. Moses had done something to prevent Dylan, the space enchanter, from tearing apart the outer space barrier. The attacks of the epic professionals could not reach the soldiers on the city walls. Dylan looked gloomily at the magic tower in the city. He had heard that the great enchanter, Moses, was a multi-elemental professional. He had many tricks up his sleeves, but he did not have any battle achievements. However, he had never thought that this person would be on par with him in terms of spatial magic alone. In fact, this person was even stronger than him in terms of defense. However, after all, this was the City of Dawn, and it was protected by the magic tower. Perhaps Moses had already set up the magic array to prevent anyone from breaking in. Hence, it was normal that the magic array could not be broken. Multiple elements? I've never seen a Grand Magus who doesn't specialize in anything in my life. Dylan sneered and lightly shouted, "Tear this spatial barrier for me." Irene and the Fire Grand Magus beside her nodded simultaneously. The former was water element, while the latter was fire element. They all held magic books and staffs in their hands. Countless magic runes rose from the books and circled around their bodies. The forbidden spell was about to be cast, and the sea of fire and torrential river water was about to shatter the spatial barrier. Despair rose in the hearts of countless people. This was because they knew that the space barrier could block for a while, but could the space barrier block the forbidden spells of 2 legendary Grand Magi? One had to know that Moses was merely a Grand Enchanter. How could he withstand 3 experts of the same level? He was not an Archmage. The citizens of the City of Dawn started to panic, but they did not flee. They hid in safer places and started to silently pray for the City of Dawn and the Lord of Dawn. It had to be said that the unity of the citizens could be seen at this crucial moment. Even if the citizens of the City of Dawn were about to die, they still wanted to die together with the City Lord. As for the new players, although they were a little afraid, they were more excited. They did not expect to encounter such a magnificent battle in the novice village. They were much luckier than the veteran players who had to travel far away to complete their missions. Moreover, they would have something to talk about on the forum in the future. But at this moment, William and Moses, who was dressed as a man, appeared on the city wall at the same time. Before the 2 water and fire forbidden spells could reach the spatial barrier, Moses extended his hand and tapped the barrier twice. Poof! Poof! Before the 2 forbidden spells, which were brimming with energy, could explode with their strongest power, they turned into ordinary water and fire elements and disappeared into the sky. The remaining energy crashed into the spatial barrier like a meteor shower, but it did not even cause the slightest ripple. The expressions of the 3 legendary experts from the magic sanctuary changed. They did not expect Moses to have such a technique. It seemed as though he had instantly analyzed the weakness of their forbidden spells. But once the murderous intent was aroused, there was no way to retreat. If they allowed Moses to retreat, the magic sanctuary would fall out of the ranks of the top forces and become the laughingstock of the other forces. Wouldn't it mean that anyone could stand on the top of the magic sanctuary and defecate? They might even say that it smelled good. Who could tolerate that? Dylan shouted, "Let's work together." Irene and the Fire Great Enchanter looked at each other and combined their magic books. They gripped their magic staffs tightly and smashed them on the ground. They shouted, "Scythe of water and fire. Buzz, buzz, buzz." A dense energy aura suddenly spread out. 2 water and fire rune tornadoes appeared under their feet. They even started to fuse together halfway. In a short period of time, a huge scythe of water and fire that was thousands of meters long was formed. This forbidden spell was a combined forbidden spell of the magic sanctuary. It was extremely powerful. Then, everyone saw the scythe of water and fire sweeping towards them. Intense energy ripples tore the space apart. Black spatial rifts appeared in the air. The scythe of water and fire was about to cut through the spatial barrier like wheat. It was going to cut everyone on the city wall in half. Because all the professionals present had lost the strength to move. It was as though the scythe of water and fire had locked onto them. However, in the next moment, everyone heard the ear-piercing sound of glass shattering. The spatial barrier was instantly cut off. Just as the scythe of water and fire was about to reach them, Moses took a step forward. He extended his slender left hand and gently clenched it. Swoosh! A huge black palm reached out and grabbed the scythe in an instant, stopping its attack. From afar, the huge scythe, which could destroy 1/10 of the city of Dawn, was suddenly blocked by the black hand. It could not advance even half an inch. Irene and the others' expressions changed drastically. They channeled all their magic power in an attempt to slash the scythe. However, Moses clenched his fist, and a gigantic black hand swept the 1,000-meter-long scythe back. Immediately, Irene and the fire grand Magus simultaneously spat out a mouthful of blood. Along with Dylan, they simultaneously cast a mountainous magic shield, using it to block the forbidden spell of turning back. Rumble. The magic shield and the forbidden spell exploded at the same time. Shockwaves spread out, and a huge canyon was blasted on the east side of the city wall. Many people could not help but widen their eyes. The 36 epic professionals of the magic sanctuary were scared out of their wits. What kind of power was this? They were all legendary great magisters, but they had never seen anyone so powerful. Not only was he able to fight 1 against 3, but he was also able to break a forbidden spell cast by a powerhouse of the same level with such ease. They had never seen or heard of such a thing before. Logically speaking, only a warlock sage could do such a thing. Dylan no longer dared to look down on the great enchanter named Moses. He carefully looked at the young man, but he could not figure out who he was. He could not help but ask coldly, "With your abilities, why are you working for the Lord of the City of Dawn? Why don't you join a magic sanctuary and seek the supreme magic truth? You talk too much. Are you afraid? Or do you not dare to attack? We will stop him. The rest of you, kill the Lord of the City of Dawn." Dylan shouted angrily. He decided to use his last resort. Even if he could not kill the troublesome Moses, he had to kill William in his territory. Only then could he prove the power of the magic sanctuary. Hence, he crushed a scroll that emitted the aura of a sage. Swish! An aura locked onto Moses. In the next second, the 4 legendary great enchanters on the battlefield disappeared. In the space of the sage seat. Or rather, the 4 of them were suddenly pulled into another dimension. A battle between sages was devastating to the gods' continent. Back then, the gods' continent was destroyed because there were too many sages participating in the battle. Hence, their battles would often be carried out in another dimension. Even if they used their most powerful moves, they would not cause any damage to the gods' continent. Of course, it was not as if the sages would enter the dimension. It depended on whether the sages wanted to enter the dimension. Moses had disappeared. The people of the City of Dawn would have to face 36 epic experts. When the players saw this scene, they thought that William was doomed. Even though they knew that William had many puppets, the difference between a puppet and a true epic expert was too great. The players felt that William had finally become reckless, now that he had offended the top forces of the legendary continent. Even if Moses could save William once or twice, he would give up on William sooner or later. In particular, they did not think that Moses would risk his life to fight against the powerful magic sanctuary for the sake of his highness. William did not know what the players were thinking. He could not be bothered to tell them that he was at odds with the magic sanctuary because of Moses. Furthermore, Director M.O. was easily dragged away. Wasn't he doing it on purpose? William had once said that when he was at the legendary level, he had escaped from the hands of a grand warlock hundreds of times. It was a face-to-face confrontation, and he had escaped hundreds of times. At that time, the magic sanctuary lord had been infuriated. Now, the grand warlock scroll was nothing to him. Moreover, when William saw Moses being taken away, the corners of his mouth curled up. He must have been overjoyed. This was because she did not want to reveal her true identity at this point in time. However, in other dimensions, even if she fought fiercely and used all her magic, the Warlock Saint would not be able to detect her. Just as William was wondering if he should use his full power to deal with the 36 experts who might be up to something, a voice suddenly rang out. Rumble. Another legendary professional appeared in the sky. That was right, for legendary experts. If the Magic Sanctuary wanted to kill William, they would make sure that he had no chance of survival. They would not send a few weaklings to help him gain experience so that he could become stronger and overthrow the Magic Sanctuary. But when he attacked, he had to go all out. The Wind Element legendary warrior, whose body was glowing with green light, was not an outsider. He was the second elder of the Mage Sanctuary, Hurricane Blade, who possessed the body of a warrior. At that moment, countless green wind blades tore through the air. The fierce wind blade also arrived in front of William. But at this moment, William took a step back and punched with a grave expression. Rumble. A lightning pillar that was thousands of meters tall soared into the sky. The second elder of the Magic Sanctuary suffered a heavy blow. His entire body was stained with blood as he was punched into the clouds. The players were dumbfounded. Was Prince William that powerful? But they rubbed their eyes. Something was not right. William had not punched the legendary warrior. A legendary thunder element warrior had suddenly appeared in front of William. He was the one who had sent the legendary warrior flying with a single punch. F***CK. Who is this guy? He's covered up too tightly. It can't be that he's also a puppet, right? That's not it. You can use insight on him. It's just that his entire body is covered in hidden information. I can't recognize him. At this moment, William grinned. You're awesome. You forced me to use my trump card. All right, let's wait and see. In the next second, Odin, who had not revealed his identity or aura, suddenly charged forward. It was a clone, who didn't have the ability to summon their clones. This was ridiculous. The reason why William dared to act recklessly was because he had a legendary clone that could instantly save him. Chapter 520. The Galeblade's name was Arinold's, and he had just been sent flying into the sea of clouds. Although it looked like he was coughing up blood, the 80% power of the punch, as well as the dense lightning elemental essence, had been blocked by his sword chi, so his injuries weren't too serious. However, after being struck by the lightning, Alino's hair was disheveled and he was in a sorry state, but his hair could not hide his sharp eyes. Ordinary epic professionals would fall into a daze when they saw his eyes. It was as if their hearts had been pierced by a sword. By the time they regained their senses, their hearts would have been pierced by a sword. Alanok was different from ordinary people. He did not like to wear armor. He only wore clothes that had healing properties. The most important point was that he did not want to be the last resort to assassinate William. He was not afraid that the Blackleaf Elves would cause trouble for him. He felt that a legendary assassinating an epic was akin to bullying the weak. The Magic Temple had started to disregard everything for the sake of reputation. He did not agree with this, because he was a swordsman. Although he had joined the Magic Sanctuary, it was only because he had received a favor from the Magic Temple Lord. He did not agree with the Magic Sanctuary's theories. He had his own beliefs. As for his creed, it was very simple. There were 3 points. The sword energy was growing. The sword consciousness was fast. The sword skills were straight. These 3 points would determine whether he could attain the sage state. So when he attacked, he did not even unsheath his sword. He only wanted to use the wind blade to kill William. He only wanted to use one move. If William could block the attack, he would live. If he died, then he would be unlucky. So what if someone in the Blackleaf Forest sought revenge? It was just a small obstacle before attaining the sage state. But Odin suddenly appeared. This was in line with Alanaka's intentions. He wanted to avoid being hunted down by the sages. This isn't a weak opponent. It seems like the legendary continent will hear my name again. Arinold took a deep breath and looked at Odin, who was charging at him like a bolt of lightning. He finally unsheathed his sword. Buzz! The heavens and earth trembled. The sound of the sword reverberated through the clouds. The sea of clouds was sliced by the green sword energy. Moreover, This was the effect of the sword only being pulled out halfway. But even so, the green sword aura that blotted out the sky swept towards Odin from all directions. Thunder Sea suppress. Odin shouted coldly. At the same time, the surface of his body bloomed with lightning. Countless bolts of lightning turned into a sea of lightning. Accompanied by a majestic aura, the green sword chi was unable to return. It was difficult for epic experts to intervene in a real battle of legendary professions. Everyone could only look up at the sky and watch the shocking scene thousands of meters above them. Meanwhile, the 36 epic experts of the magic sanctuary charged up the city walls and aimed their attacks at William. 18 of the magisters shouted at the same time, "Formation complete." In an instant, a six-pointed star formation appeared beneath the feet of the 36 epic experts. Instantly, dozens of buffs were stacked on their bodies. The dazzling light kept flashing, and their auras surged. They felt as if their attributes had increased by more than 10 levels. William's mouth twitched when he saw this. The Blood Moon Witch, who had been doing nothing, was not afraid. She quickly added 5 or 6 buffs to Burn Cinder, Jack, Xian, and the others. She raised her magic staff and shouted, "Charge!" The others did not move. The Blood Moon, which blinked her big eyes in surprise. "Why aren't you attacking?" Captain Jack and the others were speechless. Look at the buffs on their bodies. They were emitting golden light. What were the buffs on their bodies? Why did they feel like they were bloodthirsty? F***CK. Are you sure this buff is for us and not for the Suicide Squad? Fortunately, William did not stand on ceremony. He cast the beans and transformed them into soldiers. More than 20 epic puppets appeared out of thin air and charged at the magic sanctuary without any regard for their lives. The moment the two sides came into contact, the battle had reached its climax. Even though William's epic puppets had battle instincts, they were not real epic professionals. They were nothing compared to William's puppets. The magic formations on the bodies of the 36 epic puppets were very powerful. In the first clash, 3 to 5 epic puppets were destroyed, and they could not be restored. It was obvious that the experts sent by the magic sanctuary were far superior to the epic professionals of the Desert Kingdom. Fortunately, Burn Cinder and the others took the opportunity to charge in and stabilize the situation. William did not attack. Firstly, he controlled Odin to fight with the legendary professionals. It was too much for him to split his attention to fight. Secondly, Reynold was really ferocious. William knew that in the later stages of the game, Reynold was an expert who had become a sage. He was not just a sage. He had the ability to become a sage, and his killing power was unparalleled. What's more, the Magic Sanctuary had unleashed one killer move after another. Even if His Royal Highness could only watch helplessly as all his puppets died, he wouldn't dare to use his ultimate move for fear of being assassinated by another legendary expert. The Great Elder of the Magic Sanctuary. His title was Godly Map. He was a spirit great enchanter. Hundreds of years ago, he had found the materials to create a divine weapon. With the help of the powerful foundation of the Magic Sanctuary, he had created a divine weapon for William. Its name was Godly Map. He was a powerful expert who was half a step away from becoming a Grand Sage. If he attacked, William would definitely die if he did not have an intermediate elemental body to defend himself. I really have no more trump cards. I only hope that Moses can kill those 3 guys as soon as possible. William's thoughts were heavy and complicated. He hoped that Moses could kill those 3 guys, but he was also afraid that she would kill the 3 legendary enchanters. Because if she really reached that stage, the Grand Sage of the Magic Sanctuary would definitely attack. Now that they were targeting him, it was still all right. At most, they would send out a legendary master. If Moses could withstand it, William would be able to withstand it. But if Moses really killed the 3 legendary experts of the Magic Sanctuary, then the Great Elder of the Magic Sanctuary would definitely attack. Moses would definitely be able to defeat the Great Elder, but his identity would definitely be exposed. And the Martial Sage would definitely attack. Martial Sage, Soul Grand Sage, the Great Elder of the Magic Sanctuary, Godly Map, was the teacher. He was the most knowledgeable grand sage in the entire legendary continent. The battle continued. William watched helplessly as the eastern city wall of the City of Dawn was destroyed. Countless buildings collapsed to the ground. Many epic experts of the magic sanctuary were desperate to break through the siege and kill William. Time passed, but William was still unmoved. He watched as the puppets continued to die. He watched as Burned Cinder and the others were seriously injured. If they did not have the life potion, they would have died many times over. In a short period of time, countless warriors of the City of Dawn charged into the domain battlefield for William. Even if they could not even cut the clothes of their enemies, they gritted their teeth and swallowed the blood in their throats as they stepped into the domain of their enemies. The Dragonblood Legion was not here. They were out on a mission. The veterans were not at home either. In the City of Dawn, there were only a few intermediate professional recruits. The warriors were sacrificing their lives. They were using their lives and corpses to forge a line of defense. Some professionals who had lived in the City of Dawn for a long time and were not considered his subordinates were also risking their lives for him. Even the group of novice players drew their swords against him. Countless people were sacrificing their lives for him. They did not know why William did not attack. Perhaps he was controlling the puppets, or perhaps he was contacting the rescue personnel. But they knew that the Lord of the City of Dawn had never been a coward. They also hoped that William could overcome this hopeless situation and become stronger again. William looked at the City of Dawn, which had a population of 9 million. At this moment, millions of ordinary professionals were drawing their swords and fighting for him. For him, they had charged into the domain of epic professionals without regard for their lives. They wanted to buy some time for him. He blinked his eyes in a daze. Just now, he was afraid. He was afraid. He was a coward. William looked at the pair of powerful fists and muttered, "I once said that my punch can only break a wall. I still need to endure. Now, I have the power to destroy a mountain, but I'm still enduring? Will I have to endure when I become a legendary in the future, when I face the sages? When I become a sage, will I have to endure when I face the arrival of the Lord God?" At this moment, he seemed to have realized something. What was he afraid of? He had come from nothing to where he was today. At most, he would fall into the river Styx with nothing. Why would he be afraid of the Grand Mage? Even if the Grand Mage came, if he hid and abandoned the City of Dawn, would the Grand Mage dare to kill the civilians? After that, he invested all the experience points he had obtained after the Darkness invasion into leveling up. At that moment, his aura surged. He was at level 170. Another 10 levels. He was a legendary. Countless people on the battlefield felt the aura of the Lord of the City of Dawn changing again. He raised his head calmly and walked towards the experts of the magic sanctuary. Then, he stepped into the battlefield that was filled with corpses and blood. For the first time, this Lord of the City of Dawn, who was afraid of death, took off his helmet on the battlefield. At this moment, William's long hair fluttered in the wind. He pointed at his head and said, "I'm asking for death today." Legendary. Anyone else? Voices. It was earth-shattering. Nobody from the magic sanctuary replied. In the next second, Power of Dawn, thunder slash, lightning flashed, and a sword energy that was hundreds of meters long slashed down. The entire street in the Eastern District was torn apart. Countless houses exploded as the electric arc spread. Next, thunder flash. William transformed into lightning and traversed through space. His sword energy flashed continuously. Many epic professionals were like livestock in his hands. When his sword slashed down, their limbs were sent flying. These so-called epic experts of the magic sanctuary were no match for him at all. Only by joining forces could they contend against him. And William's participation. Instantly, the balance of power was tilted. So what if they fought to the death? The enemy had come to their doorstep. Were they going to retreat blindly? Which true expert did not kill their way to the top? If they were really afraid of the Grand Mage's attack, would they watch others die for them while they cowered to the back? Sorry, William could not help it. The City of Dawn was his home. It was his home for 10 years. It was the only place where he felt warm and safe. And the people from a magic sanctuary, none of them were allowed to leave. Today, they were going to kill until the world turned upside down. Chapter 521. William had been ambushed by the experts of the magic sanctuary in the City of Dawn. Within a short period of time, the news spread throughout the legendary continent from the mouths of the players. The players were no longer the same as before. No matter what they said, no one would believe them. As their strength increased, there were more and more advanced professionals. In some ways, the players had become the cornerstone of the professionals. In particular, the City of Dawn was in their faction. This group of people would not lie. Therefore, when many forces tried to go to the City of Dawn, they discovered that the teleportation portal had been blocked. There was no response when they sent the transmission scrolls. As soon as this news spread, many forces immediately sent out their experts to investigate the matter. When the Blackleaf Elves received the news, they immediately sent several legendary experts to rescue the City of Dawn. Lancelot from the Temple of Light did not want to be left behind. When he learned that his old friend was in danger, he did not even investigate the Viscount of Darkness. He abandoned his friend who was waiting for him in the dark and flew to the City of Dawn. It could be said that, in the span of a few short hours, Chun Xiaobei had arrived. All the forces on the continent turned their attention to the City of Dawn. After they obtained some accurate information, after learning that the Magic Sanctuary had sent out 4 legendary experts, including the 2nd and 3rd Great Elders, he knew that the City of Dawn was doomed. It was highly likely that the great enchanter Moses would perish on the spot. Now, they were either mocking or secretly preparing to take a bite out of the City of Dawn. In short, there were more bad ideas than good ones. Paul Bane from the Eastern Mercenary Alliance's eyes lit up. There is only one epic professional guarding the Beast Citadel. If the Lord of the City of Dawn perished, it would be the best opportunity for him to take down the Beast Citadel. However, regardless of what these old enemies were thinking, they did not dare to attack. At least, they had to wait for the news of William's death to spread before taking action. Now, they could only make some preparations. But as time passed, some forces rushed to the periphery of the City of Dawn. They were completely dumbfounded. They were also shocked. The eastern district of the City of Dawn had been destroyed. There were dilapidated ruins everywhere. Many collapsed buildings still had a strong elemental aura. Just looking at this place, it looked like a dead city. But this was not the most important thing. Instead, it was the 39 corpses hanging in the City Lord's palace. 36 epic experts and the corpses of 3 legendary grand mages. They heard the news as soon as they arrived. After Moses was pulled into the sage seat space by the 3 legendary powerhouses of the Magic Sanctuary, he charged out after more than half an hour. The 3 corpses were also thrown out. Out of the 36 epic experts, 20 had died under William's blade. Only Galeblade Arinold was left. He had been fighting with a legend Thunder-type expert who had suddenly appeared, but as the battle went on, his allies suddenly died. Arnaud's mind was filled with question marks. What's going on? Why were they so weak? In the end, he could only transform into a gust of wind and quickly disappear into the sky. He was afraid that Moses, who had broken out of the encirclement, would suddenly kill him. After all, it would still be fine if there was a Thunder Element legendary professional who could take a beating. However, there was also Moses, who had killed 3 people of the same level. That would be a little hard to handle. What about the City of Dawn? Apart from the tens of thousands of ordinary warriors and professionals who had perished, with the Water of Life, none of the epic experts died in battle. It was a great victory. In particular, the sudden appearance of the Thunder-type legendary professional, who could even compete with the Galeblade Guild, really shocked countless forces to the point that they couldn't close their legs. They kept asking about who this person was. Could it be that the Blackleaf Elves had arranged a protector for William? Anyway, the Magic Sanctuary had lost. It was a huge loss. Originally, nobody thought that the Magic Sanctuary would fail. Nobody thought that the 4 legendary experts would not be able to kill William. But the truth was proven. The legendary multi-element Great Enchanter had fought against 3 people. That nameless Thunder Legend rank expert was actually on par with the famous Galeblade. And the epic Lord of the City of Dawn had killed 20 experts of the same level. He was invincible among his peers. What kind of combat power was this? The City of Dawn was going to trample on the magic sanctuary to rise. Was the City of Dawn going to become the fifth top power in the legendary continent? But it was impossible. The City of Dawn did not have a sage expert. The magic sanctuary had suffered heavy losses. Second, Elder Dylan, the spatial great enchanter, had died. Ninth, Elder Irene, the water great enchanter, had died. A fire great enchanter from the southern region of the magic sanctuary had also died. Although there were at least a few dozen legendary experts in the mage sanctuary, there were only a few dozen. But they were not easy to deal with. If there were no accidents, the revenge of the magic sanctuary would not be far away. This time, there were 4 legendary professionals. The next time they took revenge. The great elder of the magic sanctuary, Shun Tu, would definitely bring along his divine weapon. As a result, the City of Dawn was powerful. But against Shun Tu and the tens of legendary experts from the magic sanctuary, the City of Dawn could not withstand them. Unless the Blackleaf Elves announced that the City of Dawn would be completely tied to them. But if that happened, the City of Dawn would lose its neutral status. The situation was obvious. The City of Dawn was facing its biggest crisis since its establishment. The enemy was a top power with a sage. Both sides were at odds. The forum of the City of Dawn was in chaos. Nobody commented on Prince William's looks anymore. Under such circumstances, even the players could feel the danger. We're doomed. We're doomed. What should we do? We're constantly changing factions. Now that we're going to change factions, will we be able to meet such a good faction in the future? That's right. Look at the other camps. How many of them are so nice to us? Apart from His Highness, who else would treat us like humans? It was the first time that the players in the Dawn faction felt threatened. Bad news was being posted almost all the time. The Magic Sanctuary started to hire other forces to attack the territories of the City of Dawn. For example, some players were suddenly killed by mages while carrying out a mission. Some of their corpses were even camped. The forum was in chaos. Many foreign players joined the fray and started to mock them. 1 player was banned, and 2 more players were banned. Even more players were banned. They had been envious and jealous of the Chinese players in the previous versions. Now, it was time for the Chinese players to suffer. But in the City of Dawn, the professional players of Glory, Golden Age, and other clubs had gathered together. They had even given up on their missions. Chu Yochio, forever alone, and the other club captains had solemn expressions. The other members did not dare to make sound. Chu Yochio was the captain of the Gods of Dawn team that had won the championship 3 times in a row. No one was more effective than him. He said in a deep voice, "We have 2 choices. 1, stand with the City of Dawn and fight against the Magic Sanctuary. If those damned mages want to kill us, we'll kill them. We're not afraid of death. Who's afraid of who? The other choice is simple. We can exchange our contribution points and reputation points for equipment and resources. Then we can quit the faction to stop our losses. Quit the faction and stop our losses. No matter how I look at it, the City of Dawn can't win against the Magic Sanctuary," someone muttered. The others glanced at him but did not say anything. This was the current situation. He's right. We're a club. Our goal is to compete for the glory of the nation and the glory of the players. What we want most is profit. Stopping our losses is the right thing to do. We can't let our levels drop because of the City of Dawn. If that happens, we won't be able to achieve good results in the competition. Many professional players nodded. They were not ordinary players. They should be rational and fight for the City of Dawn. It was enough for other players to do such things. They would not participate in it. Changli Jioga's eyes turned red. He could not help but say, "You can leave." "I'm not leaving. I'll be Prince William's bootlicker for the rest of my life." Have you forgotten the benefits that Prince William has given you? Especially new teams like you. You're participating in the professional league and don't have enough legendary equipment. Did Prince William lend it to you? You don't have enough contribution points to exchange for legendary secret manuals. Did Prince William let you take them away by paying in installments? Now that the City of Dawn is in danger, you're just going to leave? You pick up your bowl and eat meat, but when you put down your chopsticks, you start cursing. You're really something. You can't say that. Someone muttered. but he did not know what else to say. Chanli Jyoga's words reminded them of Prince William, who had been very easy to talk to. It was true, at least for the professional players. Prince William was really easy to talk to. He often gave them good hidden missions. Ordinary players could not borrow equipment and secret manuals, but they could. This was because they made up a lie. They said that the chosen ones were scattered across the 7 continents and would occasionally compete in secret. They were fighting for the glory of the legendary continent and the City of Dawn. As such, the seemingly silly Prince William believed them. He lent them some equipment so that they could fight for the glory of the City of Dawn. In fact, it could be said that the fact that the Chinese clubs could achieve so many outstanding results in the Gods' official league was inseparable from William's strong support. Xiao Ian bit her lips and said, "I'm not leaving either. I still remember that during the first league tournament, Prince William lent us a lot of equipment. That was how we won the first championship. Furthermore, if we leave the faction, the other players will do the same if they see this. I don't want to see the City of Dawn disappear. At least before Prince William perishes, I won't leave the faction." Swish! The long-legged Xiao Ian unsheathed her long sword and said, "Isn't it just a war? We're all advanced professionals. Even if the magic sanctuary has many experts, there will still be some ordinary mages. Who's going to fight with me?" "I'll go." Chanli Jyoga stood up. Chu Yochio laughed. "Count me in. We've won 3 championships in a row. It's all right if we don't win this tournament. If we get scolded, so be it." Forever Alone laughed. "Don't forget about me. I'll go too. Our golden era never said that we would leave the faction. Anyway, we've always been second. We've been defeated in this version. We'll work hard in the next version. Fisk, at least you're human. Count us in. Let's give the Magic Sanctuary a hard time." They attacked the stronghold of the City of Dawn. Let's sneak attack their branch palace. Let's see who's not afraid of death. I'm going to spend 100 million to buy scrolls to smash people. Lucky Dream pushed open the door. The Grand Deity team walked in. 200 million. I'm rich. I'll smash people too. Mars Dolly walked in. Ahem. I'll give you a month's worth of living expenses too. I'll give you 1 billion. Earth was not as big as the moon. A super god tycoon who had started his business by mining helium-3 walked in. Then, some top players from the big guilds also walked in. The City of Dawn was facing a calamity. But the players who had stayed in the City of Dawn for a long time did not want to admit defeat. It was simple. The players had never been afraid of NPCs. When they were weak, the City of Dawn was their backer. It protected them from being robbed and killed by NPCs. But today, they were no longer weak. They would protect the City of Dawn, their beginner's village, and their homes. In the past, the players could not understand why the warriors would die for the glory of the king. But now that the City of Dawn was facing a calamity, they could feel it. They could not bear to see the City of Dawn disappear. Fight for Prince William. Fight for Dawn. Fight for our homes. I have 17 properties in the City of Dawn. F*CK. 3 of my properties in the Eastern District have been destroyed. How many gold coins do I lose in rent every month? I can't accept this." The players glanced at Lucky Dream and were speechless. Chapter 522. It had only been a day. He gave a thumbs up to the name, Lord's Mansion of the City of Dawn. This mission had many detailed objectives and rewards. The price seemed high. More than 100,000 players had perished in battle. He did not do much. He wanted the players to maintain their passion. Moreover, Odom had left him a letter. The cohesion of 4 versions. William was moved when he saw the post. He had said that when the players were in the same camp, they would form a cohesive force. As for that sentence, it wasn't long, but it was more like a proof of allegiance. William was touched when he saw it. Since everyone is supporting me, why should I be afraid? While the City of Dawn was facing such a crisis, he displayed his 10 years of networking skills. If the Magic Sanctuary did not show some hatred. That's right. But I don't think the City of Dawn has any chance of winning against a top force like the Magic Sanctuary. We can only take it one step at a time. Chanli Jyoga sighed. He hadn't had the chance to meet Prince William recently. William had received many telepathic messages that day. Some of his good friends had even rushed over to help him. He said, "If you want to hire me, I can. I'll pay 10 million gold coins a month. I can even stay in the City of Dawn. Mission time limit. Destroy the City of Dawn and the Magic Sanctuary. The effect. Destroy the Magic Sanctuary. From that day onwards, Glory, Golden Age, Battle Fever, Dynasty, the 9 big clubs, 13 top guilds, and 6 top elite guilds would fight the Magic Sanctuary to the death. When the players saw this message, it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. William understood this very well. In the 5 years that they had known each other, William had increased his affinity to more than 800 points. It was unexpectedly good. A post on the forum of the City of Dawn was pinned to the top in a short period of time. When the king of the Lonely Mountain made a move, how could the other dwarves not come? Online games in the 21st century were like that. What about the players who joined the City of Dawn? There were also many people who sent him voice transmissions. In any case, even if they could not personally participate in this war, they would support him from the side. Battle Wizard McLean had also snuck over, seemingly intending to participate in this event. A total of 4 versions and 4 years in the game world. No matter how greedy the players were, it was impossible for them to not have any feelings. After he opened it, he saw that Changli Jioga had sent a photo and a message. It was filled with gold coins, silver coins, various mana or veins, and various other resources. But with the number of players, and with the advantage of resurrection, what was there to be afraid of? As for Annie, she had returned to her parents' home after returning from the sea god's ruins. She was now acting coquettishly with Camelot. Some of the magic branch temples and smaller factions were also flattened by a group of players using the human wave tactic. Destroy the magic temple. Many players were shouting, "Look at this quest. Her Highness isn't afraid at all." Then we're done. Odom didn't say he was coming. What was William doing? They were all the same words. As soon as the battle ended, he rushed over. He might not be able to lead the Temple Knights to fight for the City of Dawn, but he would definitely be able to do it himself. But Akarov's identity was too powerful. Given his position, no one dared to touch him. But he also understood that William was currently making various preparations and plans. He definitely wouldn't have time to deal with the players. Just do it. I guarantee that you won't die. Because he was the prince of the human empire, the human empire rarely participated in the battles of a neutral faction. No matter what kind of sacrifice they made, it was because they were sentimental. It had to be said, there were hundreds of people in the picture. If the Magic Temple really wanted to destroy the City of Dawn, they would also have to destroy the Dwarf Kingdom. Gosh, I'm excited just thinking about it. The City of Dawn has become a top power because of the participation of the players. Perhaps it's because of the participation of the players. This was also a good way to win the hearts of the people. However, coupled with his space-time endowment, he could fight against a dozen ordinary epic professionals. He would definitely be able to relieve the pressure on the City of Dawn. When William saw Odom's letter, he felt warm in his heart. He wanted to hug Odom and give him a kiss. The City of Dawn had been attacked. The magic palace of the major powers had been destroyed, and their members had been assassinated. Chu Yochio, forever alone, and the team leaders and members of the major clubs had been killed. The second floor, the third floor, the fourth floor, until there were hundreds of thousands of people. Countless players of the City of Dawn took out their swords. Even if they were not doing missions, they wanted to slash at the enemies. But the most important thing was mission objective: destroy the Magic Palace and kill any members of the Magic Sanctuary. Eternal Dawn. Against the attack of the Magic Sanctuary, the City of Dawn will fight until the end. Mission objective: provide the coordinates of the Magic Sanctuary and its members. That's right. If the City of Dawn survives, it will become a top power. We will be considered heroes. The attack of the Magic Sanctuary was the first time in the history of the City of Dawn that someone had invaded the city. More than half of the Eastern City District had been destroyed. Gosh, you're not particular at all. Send us the coordinates, and we'll attack together. You'll get rewards too. However, doing such a quest clearly gave the players a greater sense of belonging and collective honor. The City of Dawn had treated them well. When the City of Dawn was in danger, they would naturally think of ways to repay the favor. If they were not interested, they could take out their gold coins. There would be rich people buying them at high prices. Odom, Saving a dwarf like you back then was definitely the best thing I've done in my life. William kissed the space ring fiercely. From today onwards, the City of Dawn and the Magic Sanctuary will be at war. As for Chu Liuqiu saying that he was poor, as long as the City of Dawn provided resources, the blacksmiths of the Lonely Mountain Dwarves could forge equipment for the warriors of the City of Dawn at a loss. Since version 2.0, when the City of Dawn faced the Darkness invasion, the City of Dawn had never issued a large-scale mission in its name. There were hundreds of players in the picture. No matter how powerful the Warlock Sage was, he could not kill the players. Each of them had a space of 300 by 300 by 300 square meters. Lancelot was one of them. He only wanted to plunder more gold coins and experience points in a short period of time so that he could become stronger. Chanli Jioga said, "The City of Dawn is still around. Prince William is not dead yet. We will not leave." All the professional players in China are in this picture. Millions of regular soldiers and millions of mercenaries are the foundation and trump card of the City of Dawn. Other than that, the emotional players did not need to join for a long time. They only needed a few days or a few months to develop feelings for each other. In this world where no one knew who they were, where everyone killed monsters together and played games together, feelings were very sincere and simple. And that was to have fun together, to have a lot of fun. It could be said that the Magic Sanctuary was everywhere in the legendary continent. They would search for various skills and put them on the exchange list of the Dawn Mercenary team. They would buy the forbidden skill scrolls. The Magic Sanctuary had lost more than 6,000 mages. How much was it worth? William believed. He made it clear that money was not a problem. His wife, Guya, was the daughter of the president of the Eastern Federation Chamber of Commerce. Billions was nothing to him. Ahem, I'm sorry. I'm not poor at all. You don't know how much wealth Odom has given me after inheriting the Lonely Mountain. William looked at the 100 space rings on the table. The Blackleaf Elven King also sent a telepathic message. However, he could not provide reinforcements, and he could not advance. 13 magic temples had been destroyed by the forbidden skill scrolls. William did not have much to say about this situation. He just had to compensate for the losses. He could not let the commoners rebuild their houses and bear the losses silently. Akarov told them that if the City of Dawn had any troubles or lacked anything, they could inform him. It was not a problem to provide 1 billion gold coins. When Chu Liuqiu saw this mission, he couldn't help but chuckle. Prince William never gives out missions because he is very stingy. If this mission is released, the City of Dawn might go bankrupt. Then there were the experts on the God of War list and the Chosen One list, as well as the rich players from the big guilds and the Grand Deity Guild. William looked at the names. It was equivalent to 10 times the resources, territory, population, and equipment of the City of Dawn. William thought that the players would not be optimistic about the City of Dawn and the Magic Sanctuary if they were to go against each other. Perhaps many players would leave the faction. But if the City of Dawn were to face a calamity, even if the Shorty didn't say anything, he might come to kill the City of Dawn. Besides that, Chanli Jioga. Fortunately, the non-professionals had evacuated from the Eastern City area. At most, there were some economic losses to the buildings. There were not many casualties among the commoners. I don't have much money. It's just 100 space rings worth of resources. It's not easy to fight against the Magic Sanctuary. If they are really going to attack, let me know in advance. Although the Lonely Mountain Kingdom has just been established, and I have not completely controlled the kingdom, I can still send 1 or 2 legendary dwarf warriors. In fact, this was also a kind of responsibility as a king that fell on his shoulders. Mission reward, contribution points, money, experience points, equipment, dragon's blood, magical beasts. And they took the photo right outside the 3-story City Lord's mansion. The City of Dawn was not afraid. Even if they fought for 10 years, they would not be afraid. It was the same for virtual reality games in the 23rd century. Oh, you're right, but I've already killed him. His skin is too brittle. He couldn't even withstand a blow from an advanced Thunder-type assassin. He waved his hand. The prince couldn't help but smirk when he read the messages from the 3 forces. The second prince of Caesar of the war-ending empire also sent a message. Humans were emotional creatures. It was not easy for a martial sage to attack. In just 2 hours, hundreds of thousands of people had replied. William did not want to waste their friendship. A mission was sent to the ears of the players. Money, experience points, and rewards were required. I'm leaving. I just found a lone intermediate magician wearing the uniform of the Magic Sanctuary. I'm going to kill him first before talking to you guys. Those who were interested could join the mission to assassinate the brittle elders of the Magic Sanctuary. Instead, they had to fight a war of attrition. Some people want to take a bite out of the City of Dawn. But did the Mercenary Guild, Palace of Darkness, and Temple of Light not want to take a bite out of the Magic Sanctuary? Because his father was the Lord of the City of Chaos, who was not even afraid of sages. To ordinary legendary professionals, his deterrence was comparable to that of sages. If he participated, he would be breaking the rules. Or rather, Chapter 523. The headquarters of the Magic Sanctuary was located in the east of the western region, near the Moonlight Lake. The terrain here was extremely flat. The east side was the Moonlight Lake, while the south, west, and north sides were all endless forests. 9 magical towers stood erect, surrounding the Magic Sanctuary of the martial sage like the stars surrounding the moon. The tallest Magic Sanctuary did not look like a magic tower at all. Instead, it looked more like a divine temple with layers upon layers of runes and imprints. Actually, this was not wrong. Sages were existences that were on par with the gods. At this time, the crystals at the top of the 2 magic towers had already lost their glow. It was not that the energy had disappeared, but that Irene and Dylan, who were connected to their souls, had died. However, the more powerful a professional was, the less they cared about reproduction. Since the 2 of them had already passed away, and there were no descendants to inherit their belongings, there would naturally be new grand mages residing in their magic towers. As for the requirements to inherit the magic tower, they had to have the appropriate talent. However, the Magic Sanctuary did not have many other things, but there were many mages of various attributes. Even if it was a space grand magus, there would be 2 of them. There were even 3 water element grand mages. As for why the Magic Sanctuary only had 9 Grand Elders, that was because the 9 Grand Elders had to include space, time, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The other 2 could be chosen as they pleased, but a talented Grand Mage was a must. This was related to a powerful magic array of the Magic Sanctuary. If the Magic Sanctuary only had 1 saint, then these 7 great mages with different attributes would be able to unleash the power of a saint when they used this magic circle. This was one of the trump cards that allowed the Magic Sanctuary to establish itself in the legendary continent. At this time, within the Magic Sanctuary that reached the clouds, the martial sage appeared for the first time after more than 10 years of seclusion. There was no need to choose Dylan's successor. The other space element Grand Mage, Ashur, was the best candidate. There were 2 water element Grand Mages. Ever since Irene passed away, the 2 of them had been fighting for the position of 9th Elder. In the end, it was Grebo from the Eastern Region Magic Sanctuary who took over. Inside the Great Hall, a martial sage with long black hair sat on the throne. He looked very young and was dressed in a black magic robe. He had a pair of thin lips and looked like an ordinary middle-aged man in his 30s. However, whether it was his temperament or the natural majesty he exuded, they all showed that he was a god in the human world and not an ordinary male human. As for the 9 flutes under him, there were still 9 legendary masters. The Great Elder's Divine Painting. 2nd Elder Urino. The 3rd Elder, Space Grand Magus Ashur, and so on. The martial sage glanced at them indifferently and said, "Because of a neutral camp that I have never heard of, 3 grand sorcerers have died and I have to be woken up because of it? Should I praise you for being capable or for being trash?" The last sound made the hearts of many legendary big shots sink. It was as if they had fallen into an endless abyss. This unimaginable power made them lower their heads at the same time. After all, for legendary professions, kneeling was basically non-existent, even in the face of sages. The Great Elder, Shun Tu, was being watched closely by the martial sage. It was this fellow who had come up with this rotten idea. In the end, the attack had failed and caused such a huge loss. Even the martial sage felt his heart ache when he heard this news. There were only 32 grand sorcerers in the magic sanctuary, and now there were 29 of them. It was a huge loss. The great elder, Shun Tu, looked slightly aged. He wore a dark blue magic robe and could not help but swallow his saliva. "Teacher, don't call me teacher now." The martial sage glanced at him. "Then please punish me, Temple Master." The martial sage was expressionless, but he could not help but curse in his heart. "You bastard, unfilial son. Every time I say something to you, you *king retard. How'd I give birth to you in the first place?" However, he still waved his hand and gestured for Shun Tu to stand up and speak. Shun Tu then said, "This attack was originally intended to destroy the City of Dawn in one fell swoop and establish the magic sanctuary's prestige and power again. However, I misjudged the true strength of Moses and did not know that the Lord of the City of Dawn had a legendary master as his protector. This is my fault. However, I started to make use of various forces to attack the City of Dawn. While we were suppressing the Dawn mercenaries, the members of the various temples were frequently assassinated. Among them, the chosen ones who can't die seem to have caused great losses to us." The losses were indeed great. But even if they used the forbidden scrolls, they could only kill some grand sorcerers. However, in the past 3 days, 13 enchanters had been accidentally killed. A total of 13 enchanters had perished. This was not something that the City of Dawn could do. Therefore, through my investigations, I received information from various sources. The Temple of Light, the Palace of Darkness, and the Mercenary Guild seem to be secretly in contact with the City of Dawn. If I'm not mistaken, the deaths of the 13 enchanters should have been caused by our old opponents. This is because the epic professionals of the City of Dawn have all returned to the City of Dawn. They have shrunk their front lines to prevent assassinations, so they are unable to assassinate us. The martial sage laughed coldly. "It seems like you really know how to cause trouble." However, he squinted his eyes and suddenly asked, "You said that the grand sorcerer called Moses is very powerful. How powerful is he?" Shintu did not reply. Rayano said in a low voice, "Dylan, use your magic scroll to pull them into the sage space." After half an hour, the 3 of them died. "Ah, interesting. A peak grand sorcerer?" The martial sage raised his eyebrows. Shintu shook his head and said, "He was a grand sorcerer who had only broken through 4 to 5 years ago. He was a multi-elemental grand sorcerer. Logically speaking, he should not have reached the peak so quickly." The martial sage raised his eyebrows. It was the 4th era, and there were many people with great luck. Things are different now. He did not care about the suppression of other forces because it was normal. When someone was in danger, he would quickly retaliate. This way, the City of Dawn would be the scapegoat. However, even in the 4th era, May still managed to attract their attention. Multi-elemental. TSK. This made him reminisce about the past. Back then, the little girl named Anna was his true apprentice. Ever since the little girl had run away, he had tried his best to find her. The so-called closed-door training was just an excuse for him to go to other continents to find Anna. As for the fact that Shun Tu was his apprentice, he was his biological son. Outsiders did not know this. He did not pay much attention to the legendary continent because he did not believe that Anna would dare to stay here. Hence, he handed the task of finding Anna in the legendary continent to Shun Tuesday. The martial sage thought for a while and asked, "Is the multi-elemental grand sorcerer male or female? What magic is he proficient in? How long has he been in the City of Dawn?" "He's male. He lived in the City of Dawn in his early years." "Oh, back then, the City of Dawn was called the Border Town. It was a small rundown town established by the father of the Lord of the City of Dawn. From what I know, he has space, earth, and divination skills. These are all shown by him," Shun Tu replied. "Wait, who is the father of the Lord of the City of Dawn?" The martial sage was confused. He still did not know what the City of Dawn was because he had just returned home less than half an hour ago. Shintu thought of this man and could not help but feel sad. He said enviously, he started training at the age of 18 and became a legendary in 10 years. He found a pot of water essence in a river that was knee-deep and a 10,000-year-old spiritual fruit on a small hill. He went to a ruin that had been dug up by others tens of thousands of times and found a divine weapon. He was a super lucky star. However, he cheated the Blackleaf Princess and got pregnant. He broke the rules of the elves. After he established the neutral territory, he went to the desperate continent not long after. I know. It's him. The martial sage looked expressionless, but his eyes were twitching. Ever since this guy became famous in the legendary continent, he had many nicknames. What? There were a total of 10 luck cards in the legendary continent, and this idiot took up 18 of them. The rest deserved 8 luck cards. Yes, the main reason was that wherever he went, the luck of others would plummet. Many people wanted to kill him. The illegitimate son of the goddess of luck. According to limited records, many people suspected that he was the biological son of the goddess of luck, the illegitimate son of the goddess of misfortune. According to the records of the few believers of the goddess of luck, he could not be the son of the goddess of luck. He could only be the son of the goddess of misfortune, the divine weapon reaper. According to the records of many professionals who went to the ruin with him, the number of divine weapons he had was almost enough for a set. He could pick one up and throw one away. The sage was also a legend that could not be killed. According to the records of a nameless person, a certain sage wanted to kill him for his equipment. After 7 days and 7 nights of pursuit, he was seriously injured and his head was smashed by a meteorite that flew from the sky. From then on, he could not even drink cold water. What was more serious was that half a year later, when this sage was exploring the elemental plane, he suddenly disappeared and has not returned since. However, these were all secrets. Or rather, these rumors and titles were usually only circulated among the top forces. This was because the forces and professionals that were too weak could not feel how much luck they had. They would not even notice when it was sucked away. More importantly, many people who talked behind his back would have their luck plummet. Even mentioning his name might cause a little of their luck to be sucked away. What the F***CK? It was simply unbearable. No one dared to mention his name, nor did they want to. However, he went to the impassable continent. Ever since the gods' continent had not shattered, the impassable continent had become a forbidden land. For tens of thousands of years, there were at least 300 legendary experts who entered the impassable continent in search of a breakthrough. However, only 3 of them became sages and walked out of the impassable continent. According to the other sages, the luck of these 3 people was not that heaven-defying. Therefore, they were not optimistic that this man would come out alive. However, if this jinx really came out, it would be impossible. He would also know that his son had died at the hands of the magic sanctuary. For a moment, the martial sage could not help but look up at the sky. It's so difficult for me. He suddenly felt a little wronged. He wanted to cut open his son's head to see how much water was in it. Didn't the Temple of Light, the Palace of Darkness, and the Mercenary Guild treat the City of Dawn well? Why did he want to step on their heads to gain reputation? When Shintu saw the look in the martial sage's eyes, he felt very conflicted. He did not want to do this. He had tried to get the magic sanctuary to contact the City of Dawn, but they did not even bother with us. The City of Dawn acted as if they had a grudge against them and tried to kill their people. Who could tolerate that? The martial sage suddenly had a question. The lords of the neutral forces were all smart people. Most of them were proficient in the art of networking. Even though the magic sanctuary had plotted against his father, they did not dare to carry out their plans. But was there another reason why the Lord of the City of Dawn was not on good terms with him? Moses, the martial sage, raised his eyebrows. He wanted to see if there was any connection between him and Moses. There was no connection at all. However, the seed of suspicion had been planted. He decided to study it carefully, because he knew that Moses was his disciple. He was the reincarnation of the goddess of magic. If he allowed her to rise, she would be much more terrifying than Moses walking out of the impassable continent. Chapter 5:24. William also wanted to know who his father was in this world. But now, he felt that it was very difficult. This was because no matter how hard he tried to ask all the factions, even the Blackleaf Elf King, his grandfather in name, would not tell him. This group of people were all vague in their words and could not give him a reason. Fortunately, he did not care. Ever since he inherited the territory, the thousands of people in the town only had an average of 10 luck points. But didn't he survive for so many years? Now that his luck points had increased by 6 times, he had to kneel in front of the magic sanctuary? How is this possible? My luck has already increased to 6. That's 6 times the usual luck. That's 6 times the usual happiness. I'm much stronger than before. William took a deep breath. He was prepared for the magic sanctuary's operation. He was prepared to defend the city to the death. The magic sanctuary was in the neutral camp, but they would not occupy the city. They were more like merchants who depended on the city to survive. In fact, the Temple of Light, the Mercenary Guild, and the Palace of Darkness also operated in the same way. There were many benefits. They did not have to worry too much, and they were very mobile. In the worst case, they could just abandon a branch temple. But there were also many disadvantages. They could not earn much. William had decided that besides the City of Dawn and the Bee Citadel, he would not send too many experts to the other cities. The garrisons of the City of Dawn would all return to the City of Dawn. As for the temporary management personnel of some cities, it was not easy to kill them. William had made them all hide. If the magic sanctuary could find him and kill him, then there was nothing they could do about it. But even so, the cities under William's control still could not cause trouble. Don't ask why. It was because he was handsome. All the civilians and professionals who lived in the cities had hundreds of favorable impression points of him. Why would they cause trouble just because there were no garrisons? The reason why William sent the garrisons was for security. They were to guard against foreign migrants, adventurers, and mercenaries. The City of Dawn had no garrisons and no experts to guard the city. The magic sanctuary was in the neutral camp. Even though they could not massacre the civilians, they could still hire some greedy fellows to disrupt the security of the cities. But if they had Zhang Liang's plan, William would have a ladder to climb over the wall. That was the bidding plan. This was what the players called the Lord mode of city creation. In fact, for many fantasy games, most of them had a Lord building mode. However, the Game of the Gods was too realistic. If you didn't have a backer, other forces would beat you up and take over your city. This could be seen from the development of the City of Dawn. In the past, the players didn't have the opportunity or the strength. The players did not have enough time. There were too many quests in the City of Dawn. Moreover, building a town was not as easy as they had imagined. The best way was to conquer an existing town or even a city. It was a pity they could not do it. Even the City of Dawn did not dare to attack the human cities. However, the City of Dawn was facing a crisis. Thus, William made this plan in advance. Other than the City of Dawn, the Beast Citadel, and Stormwind City, Greenlight City, East Sea City, the Five Sand Cities, and several dozen towns within the territories would be auctioned off and handed over to players for management. Of course, these cities still belong to the City of Dawn in name, and 90% of the taxes belong to the City of Dawn. Do not underestimate a measly 10%. That was a massive income, enough to support a large-scale guild. Moreover, most players could not afford to have 2 combat occupations. Besides the rich players and the hardworking players, the experience points alone were enough to make them want to die. These large guilds had a large number of members and a variety of sub-occupations. In order to earn money, they would open shops inside and outside the City of Dawn to sell potions, scrolls, tools, equipment, and other items. Although the quality of these items was not very high, the new players needed them. With the great prospect of the magic revival, various NPCs started to train. Various low-level and middle-level professionals also needed these items. Therefore, the sales of these shops were very good. After all, the professionals in the City of Dawn were pure professionals, and the items they produced were also of high quality. William did not want to compete with the players for these small profits. He would rather let them earn some money. Therefore, even if it was only 10% of the taxes in a city with a population of 400,000, it would be enough to make a lot of money. More importantly, The cities that William auctioned off were all perfect cities with a large population, many professionals, and basic infrastructure. As long as the large guilds were successful in bidding, they could use these large cities and towns as their guild stations. The guild leader could be the city lord, and they also had some authority as the owners of the city. For example, they could recruit NPC soldiers and form an NPC army. They could build and expand the city. Moreover, once they became the managers of the city, they could recycle some uninhabited houses and use them for their own use. For example, they could build shops. Let's not talk about other things. Just the recruitment of NPC soldiers and the construction of their own shops would be enough to make those large guilds fight tooth and nail. Of course, perhaps many players would seize the houses in order to earn money after obtaining power. But the intelligence department that Alec had built for 10 years was not to be trifled with. The rules were already written clearly. If the players dared to seek death, William did not mind making their bids go down the drain. At the same time, it would serve as a warning to the other large guilds. But he could not let the players reap all the benefits. If the economic level of a city managed by a large guild did not improve, but declined, then there would be a lot of problems. In particular, the bidding method was one's perversion. He had to constantly reap profits according to the overall economic situation of the players. Because the players had the business acumen of modern people, the business in these cities would flourish and the City of Dawn would earn a lot. In short, William had a group of advisors under him. The players could earn money, but they could not find any loopholes. When the announcement of the bidding for the cities was posted, the players in the entire China region went crazy. The forum was filled with cheers. Many large guilds, such as Glory, Golden Era, Battle Fever, Misty Rain Pavilion, Fierce Blade Alliance, Natural Days, Righteous Sprout, Blades, Mars Alliance, and Moon Alliance, started to raise funds to bid for some cities. The 5 cities of the Sand Sea were not the main targets. They were too far away, so they were not the main targets of most of the large guilds. Their focus was on the East Sea Metropolis and Greenlight City. At this moment, Chu Liuqiu and the rest, who had just ambushed the Magic Sanctuary, had returned. Originally, the bidding had nothing to do with them. But the better the development of the club's subordinate guilds, the more equipment and resources they had. Therefore, this group of fellows came back to discuss some matters. When the guild leader of the Glory Guild saw Chu Liuqiu, he regained his confidence. He hurriedly said, "Glory is the largest guild in the China region, and we have 600,000 players. We can bid for any city. But between the East Sea Metropolis and Greenlight City, which one is better? No matter how much money we have, we can only bid for one city. If we bid for more, we won't be able to protect it." Chu Liuqiu looked at the 2 cities on the map and frowned. Changli Jioga took out a fruit from his space ring and ate it. He said, "That depends on the direction of development. Greenlight City has potential, but it is limited. This city is located in the Nightmare Forest. There are magical beasts, animals, and even giant dragons. There are also many adventurers, but the level of the monsters is too low. Beginner, intermediate, and high-level adventurers can go there. Even grandmasters can go there. But here comes the problem. This is the upper limit of the city's development. Especially since it is located in the forest, it will be very difficult to develop the population." Chu Liuqiu glanced at Changli Jioga. This little brother was becoming more and more aware of the big picture. Apart from being a little impulsive in certain matters, he was more reliable in everything else. It was not impossible to let him lead the team in the future. The reason why he had such thoughts, it was because he had plans to retire. 3 consecutive Glory Championships. This was real glory, and it was recorded. Actually, retiring now was the best choice. If he had no defeats, he would be a legend. But he still wanted to fight while he was still young. He decided that if he won the championship again in this patch, he would retire. In the future, he would find some retired pro players to form a small team and go on adventures. Otherwise, if His Highness had any enemies, they would assassinate them. When that time came, they could play more casually. He believed that once he grew up, as long as his equipment and skills weren't bad enough, apart from magical beasts, 7 or 8 top-tier pro players could solo an NPC of the same level. Even if it was a legendary boss, they could still kill it. As a result, he made his decision. Then let's choose East Sea City. The Endless Sea has endless possibilities. But you should have heard the news that the gods' 7 continents are approaching. With the update, naval battles will come sooner or later, and the country wars won't be too far away either. When that time comes, glory will be at the forefront. Country wars. Even if we have glory, we might also disappoint our fans. When Glory's guild leader thought of the country wars, his heart was filled with longing. He wanted to lead Glory's 600,000 players right now and have a hearty country war. As a result, he immediately said, "Then let's choose East Sea City, bid with all our strength, and take over the management rights of this patch." Then he could not help but complain. His Highness is too calculative. The Magic Sanctuary is carrying out assassinations everywhere. They know that we players aren't afraid of death, so they came up with this strategy. But we really can't resist this temptation. Xiao Ayan shrugged. Now we have to win the bid and stabilize the citizens of this city. Don't let the economy go down. The Magic Sanctuary can kill regular soldiers and officials, but they don't dare to do anything to the citizens. This is a huge taboo. All right, I'll talk to Forever Alone and ask him not to cause trouble. Let's try to win East Sea City cheaply. Chu Yochio nodded and then began to talk to Forever Alone. William did not know what they were thinking. Cheaply? What do they mean by cheaply? Right now, he wanted to earn back all the money he had spent on the mission. Chapter 525. William would not let the players take away his money so easily. According to His Royal Highness, gold coins should stay in a player's pocket for a while. Sooner or later, they would belong to him. In any case, the goal was to prevent the players from having too much money. Once the players had money, they would become adventurous and would become part of the scenery within a short period of time. Hence, when the players had money, the City of Dawn had to create new activities, gameplay, and strategies. Only by repeating this cycle could the players ensure that they did not have enough funds. Hence, they would risk their lives to complete missions and work hard for the City of Dawn. William did not need to be responsible for the auction. Ever since Odom had left the City of Dawn, the heavy responsibility of being the Deputy City Lord had been handed over to Lautner, who had nothing better to do. In addition to being pretentious, this uncle of his was also a calculative person, or rather, a meticulous person. These matters could not be left to him, and he would definitely not suffer a loss. This way, I'll hand the city's management over to the players. Even if the Holy Temple of Magic carries out assassinations, I won't feel the pinch even if the players aren't afraid of death. Even if they get killed and lose levels, the source of their hatred will still be the Holy Temple of Magic. This will only deepen the hatred between the players and the Holy Temple of Magic. This was because the Holy Temple of Magic had killed them and wreaked havoc in their cities. This was the same as cutting off their source of income. There was a saying that cutting off a person's source of income was akin to killing their parents. This was a blood feud. This was the best way to turn players and the sacred magic temple into mortal enemies. Moreover, even if the players keep dying, they can resurrect, so the city won't fall into complete chaos. William thought about it and felt that it was a brilliant move. Aside from sending players to their deaths, Shifeng had also discovered the second biggest characteristic of players: money. Now, the City of Dawn had given them a source of income. The Magic Sanctuary was the bad guy who had cut off their source of income. You want to fight a protracted war? For a long time. Let's fight the players who won't die first. More importantly, what kind of people are the players? They're all elite otakus from all walks of life. They know everything in the universe. Although they are not proficient in anything, the players who stand on the shoulders of giants might really make a killing by handing over the city to them to manage. The prince's heart was as clear as a mirror. This world's business methods were actually very backward. It was far from the 23rd century's business methods. He believed that as long as these 23rd century players carefully manage and take care of these cities, their economy will definitely become more prosperous. Not long after, East Sea City, Greenlight City, the 5 cities of the Sand Ocean, and 23 towns were all auctioned off for the management rights of a version, earning more than 15 million gold coins. Spending money to buy an official position? Why do I look like a fatuous ruler? The corners of William's mouth twitched. The funds would be distributed to the players to continue assassinating the Magic Sanctuary. East Sea City was won by the Glory Guild. Greenlight City was won by Golden Age. The Sand Ocean's 5 cities and 23 towns were quite far away, but with the teleport, there was no problem. All of them were divided up by the various large guilds. Almost immediately after the city management rights were auctioned, the number of players in the City of Dawn was reduced by half. They marched arrogantly to their respective guild encampments. When the news reached the ears of foreign players, they were filled with envy and jealousy. That was because even if some of the foreigners managed to occupy some towns in the neutral faction, they wouldn't actually make much profit. The Hellfire Guild in America was the first guild to own a town encampment. They had even been featured on the official website. They felt that they had surpassed the players of the legendary continent in some aspects. But now, the Chinese guilds own 7 big cities and more than 20 towns. Their number one enemy, the Glory Guild, also owned an East Sea City with a population of more than 1 million. It was as if they had jumped into a vat of vinegar. They didn't expect the City of Dawn to provoke a top-notch organization that used sages. Instead, they found a way to revive the City of Dawn. It was simply unbelievable. What's going on? Is there really a main character who survived from version 1.0 to the later stages of the game? That's not fair. What's wrong with the City of Dawn of the legendary continent? In other games, there are gods in each version, but in the City of Dawn, there are gods in every version. The gods plan to be beaten up. If there are such main characters in the legendary continent, why don't we have them? That's right. It's been 4 versions. Are the Chinese players born while we were picked up from the rubbish heap? The officials of gods were expressionless. They scoured the forum and copied and pasted the useful information onto the official website. After all, the game Gods was created by the mastermind. Since they were pursuing the truth, they had to see it through to the end. What was the meaning of scolding the officials? Didn't they know that the officials of Gods didn't have a damn plan? When it came to game planning, they felt that the Lord of the City of Dawn was more like a game planner than they were. That's all. I'm done copying and pasting. I'm going online to be a bootlicker. Prince William was awesome. Apart from the officials' petty thoughts, many Nordic players also said, ahem, apologies. Actually, we have a main character who will see it through to the end. Although he came late, it seems like he has much more potential than the City of Dawn. The French player also said, the King of Gods, Odin. Are you envious? I don't know if you guys, who don't have any mythological history, can meet your own gods. A magical fantasy world with an Iron Man? Huh, the French player spoke. The American players were so angry that they gritted their teeth. They had heard about the reincarnation of gods in their continent, but these gods had nothing to do with their beliefs. Even God couldn't control them. The players of the Central Continent dared to be so arrogant because of their beliefs. Odin was auctioning the management rights of the cities. Although the timing was about the same, no one would associate Odin and William together. Because the two of them were too far apart, no one believed that they were related. As for why Odin was doing this, it was because he did not have any subordinates. He controlled so many cities, and his territory was the size of a kingdom. But he had only been in the Central Continent for a few months. There were only a few epic professionals who had joined him. They were not suitable to be a city lord. It was better to hand over the management rights of the cities to the players and let them attract believers for him. Other things aside, when it came to multi-level marketing, the way the players talked was not inferior to the bards. All of them were clever and eloquent. Because the players had been playing virtual reality games for a long time, they had trained their eloquence and were good at bootlicking. *MN, we're waiting for the national war. We'll kill the players of the Central Continent and the legendary continent. The American players were the first to be dissatisfied. This caused the players from the other continents to roar and engage in various verbal wars on the forum. William did not expect that his action of letting Odin stay in the Central Continent would attract a lot of criticism on the forum. But then again, after the 7 continents got closer, he had his own arrangements. The 2 camps would definitely cooperate. Then they would face the pressure from the other continents. William would definitely not miss out on the national war. He would not attack openly, but he would definitely support the players in his camp in secret. After all, the Chinese and European players were his children. If they were to be bullied, he would try his best to convince them. He would tell them that William and Odin were good parents who would protect their children. He did not know what the Magic Sanctuary was up to. After the City of Dawn's defense line retreated, the Magic Sanctuary did not send any more people to attack him other than assassinate him. But he could vaguely feel that the next attack from the Magic Sanctuary would be a real killer move. So he had to be careful. Level 10. I'm 10 levels away from reaching the legendary level. When that time comes, I'll be able to protect myself. Besides sages, I'll be able to do whatever I want in the legendary continent. William looked at his experience points, but he had been cashing in recently, and he had been cashing in blood. Not to mention experience points, the players' pockets were even cleaner than their faces. So he had to wait for a long time to reach the legendary level. But no matter what, this version definitely had hope. He only hoped that the Magic Sanctuary would give him more time. As long as he reached the legendary level, he would not be afraid of the legendary experts. Although he was not invincible when he reached the legendary level, he would not be afraid of them. William vaguely sensed that the Magic Sanctuary was not attacking him. It seemed that they were worried about something, but it was because of his background as the Blackleaf Elfin Prince. In addition, the other 3 top powers were planning to attack him. But at most, it would be difficult for a martial sage to attack. But why did they not dare to attack dozens of legendary experts? At this moment, William came to the Magic Tower with a tinge of worry. Ever since Moses killed the 3 fellows, he had been in seclusion here. He did not know what he was up to. Just as William entered the tower, a voice rang out. A huge magic shield instantly enveloped the entire City of Dawn. It was thousands of meters tall. He immediately used his insight and discovered that the colorful, rainbow-like magic shield was not ordinary. This magic shield could not only block the vision of outsiders, but could also block space teleportation and the powerful attacks of legendary professionals. When Moses opened her eyes, she said, "The defense of this barrier is enough to withstand the full attack of a legendary professional. Even if there is a crack, it will recover in a short period of time." At this time, the legendary professionals who dare to enter the City of Dawn are courting death. What does it consume? William swallowed his saliva. Magical crystals. Moses glanced at him. William heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that it was not magical stones. But he could not help but ask, how much does it consume in an hour? It depends on the attack frequency and intensity. At the highest intensity and attack frequency, 300 magical crystals can last for 10 minutes. William felt a little heartache. Fortunately, he controlled 2 magical crystal mines. He had more than 90,000 crystals in storage. Moses immediately said, "In order to set up this barrier, I used 30,000 magical crystals." William collapsed to the ground. Moses helped him up. He seemed to know why William had come. He said in a low voice, "You felt uneasy. I also felt that someone is targeting me. If there are no accidents, the martial sage will appear." William clenched his fists and looked deeply at Moses. "If he really comes, you have to leave quickly. If a sage wants to kill an epic like me, he has underestimated the Blackleaf elves behind me. Don't worry, I only sensed it. If he really comes, I will know." Moses did not reply directly. He looked calmly at the sky, as if he was still looking forward to the arrival of the martial sage. Chapter 5:26. More than a month had passed since the Magic Sanctuary had launched their attack on the City of Dawn. During this period of time, the 2 sides had been killing each other openly and assassinating each other in secret. In addition to the undercurrent of various forces, both sides had suffered considerable losses. The players were good at suicidal tactics. As long as they found a magic branch palace, they would lead tens of thousands of people in charge there. Even the great mages could not stop them. After all, enchanters were not cabbages. It was impossible for every magic branch palace to have one. Secondly, it was the rich players who used money. If an enchanter cast a forbidden spell, the magic branch palace would be destroyed. Nothing would be left. Lucky Dream and Earth were not as big as the moon. Mars Vigor and Mars Vigor were the main players who used money. Each of them destroyed more than 20 magic branch palaces. The power of a single person was comparable to that of tens of thousands of players. They could enjoy the experience and rewards alone. Ordinary players could not afford to do this. Of course, as the magic sanctuary was often located in the cities of other powers, such illegal actions would often lead to the encirclement and suppression of the nations. It was a pity. Both the magic sanctuary and the city of Dawn belonged to the neutral camp. As long as they did not cause trouble in the cities of the human empires, the legions in the cities of the human kingdoms would turn a blind eye to it. They would only send out legions to show the commoners in the cities. As long as there were not too many casualties among the commoners, no one would care. The magic sanctuary had also been involved in many operations. Besides the mages, they had also hired bounty hunters, mercenaries, and adventurers to assassinate the city managers of the City of Dawn. The bounty hunters had other tasks, such as disrupting public order, killing, arson, and robbing. They would do all sorts of bad things. But no matter how one looked at it, the magic sanctuary was at a disadvantage. However, the magic sanctuary was a powerful organization. Every time the City of Dawn wanted to cause some damage to the magic sanctuary would suffer heavy losses. Fortunately, most of the casualties were players. This was also because William's thoughts were meticulous and his orders were decisive. Besides the regular soldiers who were on mercenary missions, the legions stationed in the cities retreated to the City of Dawn, the Beast Castle, and Stormy City. Meanwhile, the officials in the other cities were made up of players. Even if there were a lot of casualties, it wouldn't be a big deal to the players. On the contrary, it would incite a backlash from players who would go all out to cause trouble for the Sacred Magic Temple. Needless to say, the City of Dawn was Prince William's strongest city. It could activate the barrier that enveloped the entire city at any time. Even a few legendary creatures would die if they came. William noticed that things weren't going well, so he called Gerald back and had him oversee the citadel. Every day, he would feed this legendary lord with all kinds of magical beasts. Because of this, the Sacred Magic Temple couldn't take action against the Beastmaster's citadel for fear of attracting the attention of the dragons. As for Stormy Island, after William was assassinated, no one was allowed to enter. Even players were prohibited from entering the island. The island's security had been greatly improved. Even if several epic professions managed to charge in, the Dragonblood Legion's heavy encirclement wouldn't allow them to escape alive. At this moment, at the beginning of the Fourth Era, the first signs of the Infinite War had already appeared. The City of Dawn and the Sacred Magic Temple were at loggerheads. Both sides fought in the cities of the various factions. Players and mages could be seen everywhere. The dark creatures left behind by the Darkness Invasion were wreaking havoc. Devils frequently appeared in the human cities. The Demon Hunters Union was also very busy. Many adventurers turned to join the Demon Hunters Union, and from then on, embarked on the path of rearing succubi in captivity. The winged male and female models descended. As they occupied the human territories, they started to have various conflicts with the human empires. The dragon race also started to cause trouble. Dragons of various ranks started to wreak havoc in the human kingdoms, causing unspeakable suffering. Often, an entire town would be wiped out. Sometimes a small city would suddenly be wiped out. Fortunately, the human princesses stayed in the castles, so they couldn't be captured so easily. Even so, adventurers and mercenaries continued to venture deep into the forest. They intended to become dragon slayers. However, they didn't know the truth. The dragon race's rebellion couldn't be stopped. Even the legendary experts of the human kingdoms had to endure it. The human empires had been slaying dragons for countless years just to create the Dragonblood Legion. Now, the human empires had to bear the consequences. If the dragon race didn't vent their anger, According to the dragon race's personality, they would definitely choose to ally with the winged race and attack the human race at the same time. The human empires couldn't afford to pay such a heavy price. Therefore, the pressure could only be borne by the human kingdoms. In short, when the big boss made a mistake, the underlings had to take the blame. Evil deeds were done by the underlings, but if they went to jail, the underlings would be punished. The flames of war had been ignited. In the hurricane of the Fourth Era, the flames would only get bigger and bigger. The weaker forces would be reduced to ashes, and the stronger forces would rise from the ashes. The top forces and empires were embroiled in a chaotic war. Even the battles between the races had started. The infinite war was about to begin. The magic sanctuary. After William finished reading the information that Eric had sent, he felt unwell. A chaotic war was about to break out in the legendary continent. The four regions of the north, south, east, and west had different situations. Logically speaking, this was the best time for the City of Dawn to accept employment missions. However, the City of Dawn was being targeted by the magic sanctuary. It was difficult for them to act, and they could only send large numbers of soldiers to train in the three cities to prevent sneak attacks. If this drags on, even if the City of Dawn doesn't suffer too many losses, it won't be able to accept the missions from the various forces. If it weren't for the fact that I've just assigned the management of those cities to the players and that I've personally issued large-scale quests for them to do, those little hussies would be clamoring to change factions again. The prince raised an eyebrow, but he didn't know how to resolve the crisis with the magic sanctuary. Were they really going to start an all-out war? They couldn't win. The City of Dawn could only fight passively, asking for help. The elves hadn't fallen into a chaotic war yet. But after 5 years of war with the Orc Empire, they had suffered great losses and were recovering. The three sages had a good relationship with William. They could protect him, but it would be too difficult to ask them to deal with the magic sanctuary. It was against the rules. The martial sages weren't pushovers, so they might not be afraid. The Supreme Pontiff of Light? William couldn't help but think of the strongest person in the mortal world. The two of them had met a few times, and the handsome endowment had played some role, but the affinity between them was only a mere 180 points. The possibility of asking him to help was almost zero. Furthermore, in the eyes of the Supreme Pontiff, the war between the Magic Sanctuary and the City of Dawn was like a child's fight. It wasn't worth mentioning. Whoever died would be unlucky. The Supreme Pontiff could not be bothered. His attention should be on the gods who were about to descend in the Dark World. Daniel? William shook his head. I can't. He's making arrangements in the Dark World. I don't think he has the time to care about me. It's difficult. His Highness sighed softly. He was doing this for Moses' sake. Actually, he wasn't complaining. He knew that if Moses hadn't helped him for the past 10 years, he would have died long ago. Even if he hadn't died, the City of Dawn wouldn't have grown to such a scale. Now, all he could do was resist all the pressure. But just as he was about to explode, swish, Moses instantly appeared in the city lord's mansion. Before he could see Moses' face clearly, William appeared outside. He saw that the defensive barrier had been activated, but a beam of light appeared out of thin air. It penetrated the magical barrier and smashed the city lord's mansion into ashes. The crystal at the top of the city lord's mansion shattered when collapsed. When the commoners witnessed this scene, they covered their mouths in fear. They were afraid that the prince would die. Fortunately, someone pointed at William, who was floating in the sky. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Even though the players were shocked, they immediately turned on their surveillance cameras. Needless to say, it had to be the Supreme Pontiff. Just as they were wondering how many great enchanters would be sent, perhaps the City of Dawn still had some trump cards. The sky above their heads started to distort. Then a huge black hole that was tens of thousands of meters appeared. A magic sanctuary that was thousands of meters tall slowly appeared above the City of Dawn. It covered the sky. It was like a god had descended. The majestic aura made everyone kneel on the ground. There were 18 legendary powerhouses standing on both sides of the throne. The commoners and professionals of the City of Dawn widened their eyes as they stared blankly at the magic sanctuary above their heads. The players gaped at the scene in disbelief. They could not believe what they were seeing. The professional players of the Glory Club were purchasing resources in the city, but they were also stunned when the Supreme Pontiff appeared above their heads. Chu Yochio gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Are they not going to give us a chance? This is the Supreme Pontiff. Could it be that the person sitting on the throne behind the 18 legendary experts is a sage? It's over. The players did not speak, but these two words echoed in their minds. The martial sage did not have the time to deal with the players. He was like a god as he looked at the city of Dawn with indifference. He said in a calm tone, "Lord of the city of Dawn, if you want to live, hand over Moses." Many people could not help but wonder. Wasn't Prince William your true enemy? What did he have to do with Moses? Did he kill a great enchanter, and one of them was your son? But just when everyone was looking at William, William suddenly stopped. He held Moses' hand and smiled. "I'm a coward, but my goddess is even more cowardly. I'll compensate you 10 billion gold coins, and we'll have no more grudges. How about that?" He was terrified. The prince had decided to be terrified. A wise man would not fight when the odds were against him. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Just as he finished speaking, everyone was silent. Countless people stared at the sky in bewilderment. They watched as Moses slowly transformed into a graceful goddess. A true goddess. She was looking at William affectionately. The players were stunned. She was actually a hero dressed in male clothing. When the martial sage saw Moses' gaze, he expressionlessly twitched his mouth. Right now, his mood was very complicated. Really, I'm not lying. He could not understand this world. What was going on? Heavens! Mother Earth! What did the gaze of the goddess of magic mean? I don't care if she is your goddess. I don't believe that she will forget her past hatred and that I want to refine her into the incarnation of the Lord of Magic. The martial sage's eyes flickered. That was what he said. But what he really wanted to do, and whether he wanted to refine Moses into his incarnation, were all uncertain. In the next moment, boom, the 18 legendary professionals attacked at the same time. It was earth-shattering. The martial sage was determined to kill Moses. Chapter 5:27. But the martial sage was too decisive. More importantly, the aura that he exuded was so strong that no one could look at him directly. It was as though he did not belong to this world. What the F***CK? Many people were stunned. They were able to easily analyze all the moves that had been used in the past. What was even more unbelievable was that a man wearing a full set of divine equipment and holding a snow-white longsword walked out. The ring on his left hand emitted a holy radiance. Odin's clone was summoned to protect him at all times. What a show-off. Regardless of whether he was dead or alive, this was a classic scene in the history of the gods. It was not to be missed. There was no use in roaring incompetent. Bang! I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take your hand of Thunder God. You're an interesting protector. I'm going to kill you too. Moses has to die too. The aura of sage. Moses could still leave. The Blackleaf Elf King told me not to be afraid. Although I'm being held back, I'll be here soon. This was the power of a sage. Even if Moses went all out, he could not stop the attack of the martial sage. William, Odin, and the Super Sea Monster were fighting against the 13 legendary professionals. The man waved his sword again, or rather, threw it out. The 18 legendary professionals did not hesitate and followed him. Even if there was a trap ahead, they were not afraid. It was as though the Grim Reaper had judged the life and death of William and the others. Many players who were flying too fast were caught up in this wave of attacks and died on the spot. At that moment, the martial sage caught his breath and took out a magic staff. He transformed into a 10,000-meter giant and was about to attack again. The martial sage was a soul-type warlock sage. He had many strange tricks up his sleeves. What's up with her eyes? Not only can she see the weaknesses of these ordinary divine equipment, but she can also see through magic. She has never revealed this before. The martial sage saw Moses escaping and using simple magic to break the weaknesses of other people's forbidden spells. The martial sage had found a warlock sage from another continent? William glared at the sly old man. He thought that many people in a legendary continent were against the magic sanctuary and that no one would help him. The Karma Divine equipment was sure to hit its target. The layers of magic shields on the martial sage's body were useless, but a bloody hole appeared in his abdomen. It was as though he'd been smashed by a heavy hammer and crashed into the deep sea like a meteorite. Countless snow-white, sword energies poured down like a 10,000-meter waterfall. As long as a time dragon stepped into the legendary realm, they would jump out of the river of time and become an immortal existence. Unless they were killed, they would never die. The man in full godly attire coughed softly and said in a low voice, "He only has a broken godly weapon on him. It doesn't look attractive at all. He doesn't even bother to bend down to pick it up." Shintu spat out a mouthful of blood and hurriedly put away his divine artifact. However, the man seemed to have understood something. He glanced at the dying William. The feeling of being connected by blood was definitely not fake. In particular, they had to be on guard against the time dragon's breath at all times. If they were really sprayed by it, it was guaranteed that every piece of their body would undergo different changes at different times. Their elemental body would become extremely uncoordinated, which was the most fatal part. Warlock could see through magic, but the magic was only magic that a magical. Magic. It had have at the martial that. But there were true sage dragon kings, and there were also legendary dragons. What was more important was there were misty clouds on the peaks of the mountains. Magical beasts and sea beasts were rampaging in the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. It was like a world of its own. Not only were there very few time dragons, but they were also abnormally powerful. He could not imagine that Moses was so powerful. Just the strange light emitted from his eyes could penetrate his divine equipment. The damage was not great, but it was not small either. Moses shook his head. "It's not that I don't want to leave. I feel that he wants to kill you. He wants to kill you." He had found many epic experts as reinforcements, but they could not be used. They could not participate in this war. But this was not the end. Moses' flying speed was not slow. He flew towards the south in an instant, as though he wanted to escape to the endless sea. "I feel that if I kill the three of you and refine all of you into my avatars, I might not even need the Lord of Magic to descend. I can reach the Supreme Sage realm by myself." The snow-white sword that was tens of thousands of meters long was not retracted. It stood upright in the deep sea. Prince William was expressionless. He secretly held the octopus doll in his left hand. It was fine for a temporary sage to bully a legendary professional, but he was no match for a veteran sage like Moses. He was getting more and more curious. Actually, warlock sages had the same ability. No, a normal warlock sage's ability was far from this strong. Prince William lay in Odin's arms with a gloomy face. He looked at the man and woman flying over. Moses was being beaten up by the martial sage. Moses's face turned cold. The most anxious people were the streamers like Fatty. All of them were going all out. They crushed many scrolls that increased their movement speed and stacked buffs on their bodies. When a martial sage appeared, the space was already locked. It was difficult to tear open a crack in space, let alone open a space tunnel. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The martial sage did not attack immediately. He just sat on the throne and stared at Moses indifferently. In order to invite the three warlock sages to help delay the city race, he had paid a huge price. What was this? "Hey, martial sage, what are you doing next to my house?" The martial sage also sat on the throne calmly. He glanced at his disappointing son. That was the goddess of magic. Odin, Joss, and even the giant sea monster were about to be killed. Everyone saw the divine sword turn into a sword mountain that was tens of thousands of meters tall. It fell on the head of the giant, causing it to become smaller and smaller. Damn it, kill her!" Shintu roared. As the great elder of the magic sanctuary, not only did he lose face, but the price of repairing the divine weapon was also very painful. He might even have to ask his father for compensation. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. Because of what the martial sage had just said, the prince's aura was getting weaker and weaker. He was about to fall from the legendary rank. However, Moses was only a legend, yet her eyes were able to see through the spells cast by others. This obviously made the martial sage feel that it was a little unbelievable, but it also made him more determined to kill Moses, or to capture her and turn her into his avatar. Or rather, the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas were shattered. Two sun-like holes appeared on the scroll. The clouds above the mountains dissipated, and the magical beast trembled and hid. Serene, when she was still a magical tutor, she could already escape from under his eyes. Wasn't it too easy for her to see through his thoughts? There were two-time territories on this battlefield. This made them feel so uncomfortable that they wanted to vomit blood. Boom! So this was the divine spirit. Just as the prince was wondering why the elven saint was not helping them, the great elder Shin too held a scroll in his hand. With a wave of his hand, a painting of mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas appeared in the sky. It was tens of thousands of meters wide and could be said to cover the sky. At this moment, the great elder Shin too laughed coldly and took a step forward. He laughed coldly. "Why aren't you running? Do you really think that the monster under the sea can kill us?" Feeling this aura, everyone from the magic sanctuary turned their heads in shock and looked at the druid. He was not ugly. Wouldn't it be better to just kill him? The woman beside him looked deeply at the man in front of her, as if she was looking at her idol. Even though her own son was bleeding from all 7 orifices, she did not care. The martial sage had beaten Moses to the brink of death. If not for the life potion, she would not have been able to hold on for so long. At this moment, he was not the strongest. He was not even considered a high-end legendary. However, he had inherited the wealth of the magic sanctuary and had an artifact in his hands. He was not weak either, regardless of the other 2 legendary powerhouses. If the Taurens had not hidden in the City of Dawn, they would have been killed by the shockwaves of the battle. In particular, Moses could see through the weakness of their artifact at a glance. He did not waste any time and directly attacked it. It was unbelievable, but they were still very shocked. The City of Dawn had 3 legendary professionals as reinforcements. As for the martial sage, it was obvious that he was here to hold the fort. He did not intend to make a move now, nor did he intend to attack the normal legendary professionals. Even if he could withstand it, the amount of mana crystals he would have to expend would be astronomical. But this sentence, however, in that era, humans were slaves and food for the dragon race. Logically speaking, the City of Dawn had the resources to become a top power. Because the Elven King had personally promised him, he would definitely fulfill his promise. The seawater within a radius of 100,000 meters was cut into pieces. But with 18 legendary professionals attacking at full power, could the barrier of the City of Dawn withstand them? The human empires and the Seraphin were also watching the battlefield from afar. Therefore, countless players watched as the members of the sacred magic temple chased after the 2 of them. These fearless players naturally followed suit. Although they were slow, as long as they had the slightest chance, they wouldn't give up on watching a legendary battle. The martial sage might not dare to kill Moses. He was very important to the elves. If the martial sage killed him, he would definitely suffer the wrath of the elves. The history of the City of Dawn was about to come to an end, but as the battle progressed, they became more and more desperate. William's expression changed. How was it possible? Was the martial sage not afraid that the magic sanctuary would not be able to withstand the wrath of the martial sage? William and Moses escaped far away. They only stopped when they were at a depth of 10,000 meters. The moment he rose from the ground, he transformed into a giant dragon that was hundreds of meters long. The surface of his body was covered with huge charcoal scales. The black scales were like hourglasses and covered his eyes like a mask. His body was also emitting an indescribable radiance. It was no wonder that the magic sanctuary had waited for a month before attacking the City of Dawn. They had been waiting for him. Suddenly, a spatial crack appeared. He was smashed to the bottom of the sea, which was 10,000 meters deep. Oh yes, our son, but the players did not care. When they saw that the legendary professionals had left, they immediately revived on the spot and hurriedly chased after William. William could guarantee that he had encountered the most difficult battle in history. William's heart sank. If he really did that, he would not be able to turn the situation around. At this moment, he hurriedly transmitted a message to Moses. Hurry up and leave. Use your method to leave. I know that you have the ability to do so. They were much more powerful than the legendary professionals. In the next moment, just as the legendary professionals were chasing after Moses, legend had it that she could use all types of magic. Wasn't it too easy for her to see through the weakness of the godly equipment? The martial sage became more and more frenzied. He could not help but roar. When I reach that realm, I will make the elves pay for their revenge. Sarimas and the three great enchanters engaged in battle. Both sides unleashed their domains. Although he was a little ugly, he was not as handsome as the cowardly Blackie. At least they could see if William was dead or alive. In just a few breaths, the forest below was destroyed. The rainbow lake suddenly sank by 7 to 8 meters, and countless amounts of blood seeped out from the lake. 5 of the 18 legendary professionals from the magic sanctuary had been lured away. Now, there were 13 of them left. Countless people were dumbfounded. But there was one thing. Large patches of trees were broken. Many docks and fishing boats that had been built for more than 10 years were reduced to powder. Temple Lord Wu had many close friends in the God's continent. He knew more sages than you had seen. It was rumored that a few time dragons from the first era had survived. Shen Tu's expression changed slightly. He decided to leave a total of 3 people behind to block the legendary druid. One of them was a time enchanter. Otherwise, he would have to leave more people behind to block the super druid. How dare you? The martial sage shouted angrily. Several legendary auras suddenly rose from the city of dawn. He was one of the few warlock sages in the legendary continent. He was a martial sage, lord of the city of dawn. If you leave now, I can still spare your life. Shintu continued to speak. He himself, they knew a lot about the history of the first era. It felt as if a higher being was looking at a lower being. The sword energy continued to press him down until he was pressed into the lava. This made William a little confused. The martial sage, who was at the bottom of the sword energy, continued to sink under the impact of the sword energy. The aftermath of the 2 light rays shot up to the sky and gradually disappeared into the starry sky. Time Dragon. The man did not care about the people around him. He muttered with a strange expression, "Wife, what's going on? We came to the legendary continent the moment we came out from the impassable continent. The distance doesn't seem right." The 2 legendary realm dwarf warriors also entangled the 2 grand mages. When the 2 sides collided, an earth-shattering explosion erupted in the sky, and bursts of air spread out. But, there was no other way. William and Moses had estimated wrongly. They did not expect that the martial sage would rather give up on the magic sanctuary and kill them in search of a chance to advance to a higher realm. To tell you the truth, the elven sages have no time to deal with you. Do you really think that the magic sanctuary has no help? He rubbed his chin and glanced at the martial sage, who had suddenly stopped. Then he stretched out his hand and pulled out a woman from the space tunnel. In just a few breaths, the martial sage seemed to have heard the conversation between the 2. He smiled strangely and looked at William. "That's right. The magic sanctuary is afraid of revenge, but I'm not. I want the 2 of them to be like the monkey son, unable to escape the 5 fingers mountain of the Buddha." Moses turned back and glanced at them. His eyes shone with a chaotic light. Could it be that the heavens know that I'm homesick and want to see my son? So they sent me here. Not bad. They have good eyesight. He wanted to use his divine weapon to contain the 2 of them, especially when the barrier was broken. Even if the legendary professionals did not want to attack the city of dawn, the aftermath of the battle would still cause countless deaths and injuries. The entire city would be destroyed. Was this the eyes of fire and gold? When the martial sage saw this, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. He could not see through the person in front of him, but he felt that this so-called protector had some tricks up his sleeves. The martial sage suddenly attacked. Countless rays of light flowed on the surface of her body. She had also stepped into the sage state and decided to fight head-on. The martial sage was expressionless. He looked at the man who had a body full of divine weapons and did not know how to keep them. He wanted to leave. But in order to prevent the three elven sages, this cunning man had actually called in reinforcement from other continents. The battle between legendary professionals was too strong, not to mention anything else. The Temple of Light, the Palace of Darkness, and the Mercenary Guild. But he could not take William away in front of the martial sage. It should be adopted, right? The person who had inherited the legacy of the beast god had left for 5 years. After he had fulfilled the wish of the beast god, he had finally returned to his hometown as a legendary druid. It did not take long. Even though it was just a temporary sage aura, it still caused many legendary professionals to stare in shock. When the people of the city of Dawn saw him, they could not help but feel nauseous. The players also saw this scene. They continuously used their cameras to record every second of the battle. Even many forces that were observing in the dark sucked in a breath of cold air. How can it be? How can he have the blood of the time dragon? Isn't the legacy of the druids broken? How can he still have such a powerful existence? Many legendary great enchanters were in disbelief. Moreover, there was a martial sage who did not seem to be attacking, but could attack at any time. Therefore, he glanced at the martial sage again and stretched out his left finger with a ring. When he pointed it at the martial sage, he said, "Bayou." This man, who was covered in divine weapons, took out a saber and hung it on his waist. It seemed that he felt uncomfortable without something on his waist. Only then did he say, with an indifferent expression, "I'll suppress you for 10 years. When my son steps into the Saint Realm, he'll personally take your life." The man, who was covered in divine artifacts, gently swung his sword downwards. In the next second, countless forces were observing in the dark. They did not expect the situation to develop to this stage. They also did not expect the City of Dawn to have so many trump cards. It could even be said that it was not a picture at all. It was more like the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas had suddenly appeared. And William knew who the magic sanctuary wanted to kill. Both of them had a tacit understanding and instantly escaped, until the martial sage was completely sealed in the magma. The sword energy was broken. Chapter 528. Their eyes met. William's heart was filled with emotions, and his gaze was complicated. He had never expected that he could survive because of his father, William. With the help of Alice, William walked down from Odin's arms. He looked at the woman in front of him and respectfully called her mother. After all, Alice was still all right. He had deeply felt her motherly love, and the inner armor had saved him countless times. But it was a little awkward to suddenly acknowledge her as his father. But things were not that bad. This seemingly middle-aged man did not say anything like, "Come, call me father." He just walked in front of William and patted his shoulder. With a look of admiration, he said in a deep voice, "Not bad. You have my demeanor in the past." "Yes, it's just that your luck is a little bad." The man revealed an awkward but polite smile. "Ahem, hello." William was a little puzzled. He did not know what he meant, but his luck was low, and it was innate. Could it be that he was to blame? The man did not hear the 2 words he wanted to hear, but he still said in a gentle tone, "That's right. Ever since you were born, I have never seen you, nor have I done anything to raise you. I believe that time will wash away the unfamiliarity between us. But you should also know that I entered the impassable continent to save you and your mother. I even almost died there. Actually, I have to thank you. If you had not saved your mother, and if she had not sensed that I was in danger and risked her life to enter the impassable continent, I might have really died there." The man's tone was very casual, but the hidden killing intent on the surface of his body made people feel as if they had fallen into a dark abyss. The impassable continent, a continent that belonged to lunatics. No matter where anyone stayed for a long time, they would become a lunatic who only knew how to kill. It was not that easy to maintain a state of mind there. Who knew how many creatures he had killed there? But William finally solved the doubts in his heart. It was no wonder that he did not meet his long-lost wild father in his previous life. It turned out that it was really because of this small moth that caused such a huge change. Then the man in godly armor continued saying, "It's fine if you don't call me father, but the bloodline cannot lie. You are my son. You only need to remember my name. Roger's divine luck. William nodded calmly, but his mind was racing. Divine luck? Roger smiled and said, "Let's go to the border, the city of dawn." At this moment, he glanced at the many hidden forces around him. He couldn't help but chuckle. Don't hide. Tell your masters to gather at the city of dawn in 3 days. I've stayed in the impassable realm continent for so many years, so I more or less know some things. They definitely want to know. Many of the legendary professions hiding in the dark wanted to escape immediately when they heard this. What? To the city of dawn? Let you absorb our luck. Let's go, let's go. We'll never see you again. Don't come either. We don't welcome you. However, Roger smiled again and said, Don't worry, there will be a trace of luck for you. Next, he glanced at Moses, who had recovered well. He sighed and said, Thank you. I heard from Alice that you are very supportive of William. The city of dawn is developing very well because of your support. You're welcome. Moses had been on the run all the way until she was rescued by Rogers in the Blackleaf Forest. Then, with Roger's strong luck, she managed to escape a calamity. Since then, she had been living in the border town and slowly breaking the curse. But there were definitely some disadvantages. He had absorbed all the luck of the entire town. Even Moses, who was an enchanter, was not an exception. At that time, it was almost uncontrollable for Rogers to absorb the luck of others. Or rather, under certain circumstances, it was very difficult to control. Fortunately, his luck was high enough to prevent the low luck of others from rebounding. At that time, Rogers had already broken the rules of the elves, and coupled with his uncontrollable luck, the Elven King didn't dare to let him have anything to do with the elves, so he immediately took Alice away. Moses saw that Moses's luck was very high, and he seemed to be a natural son of luck. She gave him a hint and let him go to the impassable realm. But she did not expect that Moses would come back alive. However, when Moses thought of her relationship with William, she could not help but blush. Their relationship had suddenly become a mess. But then again, a goddess was a goddess. She quickly recovered to her original state. She had heard of Roger's name before, but she did not know his surname. Luck? Luck? Bad luck? Who was he? Why did it sound so familiar? But she did not remember. The crisis of the city of dawn had been resolved. The martial sage had been suppressed, but Rogers did not attack the other legendary warriors of the magic sanctuary. He allowed them to escape. However, they could not escape from the magic sanctuary. Because the martial sage had been suppressed, the magic sanctuary had become a masterless place. How could the other 3 top forces not take a bite of the meat that was already in their mouths? Without a doubt, the defeat of the magic sanctuary had become a reality. The sudden appearance of a sage and a legendary warrior made the players dumbfounded. In particular, the scene of the man wearing dazzling equipment and suppressing the martial sage made the players' blood boil. He was too powerful. There was nothing more to say. The boss was impressive. There were hundreds of posts on the forum of the City of Dawn every second. Within a short period of time, the words "boss is impressive" have been posted tens of thousands of times. If not for the fact that it was the 24th century, the server would have been flooded. At the same time, various videos and screenshots of the martial sage were posted all over the forums. Many players even went out of the country and started posting on the forums in the mainland. The foreign netizens were filled with envy and jealousy. They knew that the City of Dawn was about to be destroyed. How could the Lord of the City of Dawn be the son of the God of Luck? Was there need to be so unreasonable? Couldn't they give the sacred magic temple a way out? Many players used their insight on the snow-white longsword that was the source of the seal. Gosh, it was just as they had imagined. It was a godly weapon. When the exaggerated attributes of the sword were posted, many players drooled. He couldn't wait to run over and pull out the sword. But the players knew that if the godly weapon could be easily pulled out, it would not have been used as a sealing godly weapon to suppress the martial sage. But how should they put it? A godly weapon was used to suppress a sage. Wasn't there too many godly weapons? Come to think of it, that big boss was covered in equipment that looked extremely dazzling. Perhaps he really had a lot of divine equipment. In fact, there was a problem on the forum now. and that was the sudden decrease in a number of posts about His Highness. But it could not be helped. When the boss appeared, he immediately outshone Moses and William. More importantly, the players did not have to change factions anymore. It was as if their faction had a sage as their backer. Gosh, it had risen. The top power. Even the human empires had to be wary of the top power of the continent. The players thought that it was time for them to dominate the continent. Even though the two of them were far apart, they could vaguely feel that the two bosses were related to Prince William. There were even some who directly told the truth. I feel that Prince William is relying on his father. Possibly. +1 inch, possibly. +2 inch, but I have a problem. The relationship between Prince William and that man doesn't seem to be that friendly. They don't have the intimacy of hugging each other when they meet. Yes, I can see Prince William's dead fish eyes from afar. He's expressionless. TSK, a melodramatic drama is about to appear. Coupled with Her Highness' identity as a half-elf and the fact that the Blackleaf Elves didn't support her in the early stages, there might be a 300-episode super television series. Unforgettable! The players cheered on the forum. They could not wait to create a ranking list of the sages. Many people thought that the nameless boss was the strongest among the sages, because he had the ability to suppress a martial sage. But many players did not think so. According to the statistics of the players, there were at least 300 sages in the entire God's continent. The boss with godly equipment was obviously not the strongest. Otherwise, if others knew that he had a special relationship with William, the martial sage would not have killed him. Indeed, many players felt that this was the case, but they were still very curious. What kind of existence could be considered the strongest in the God's continent? The videos and screenshots that the players saw were only superficial. In addition, they did not know how terrifying Roger's godluck was. They could not sense the thoughts of the various forces on the continent. If it could be summarized in one sentence, that man whose name she couldn't name actually didn't die, and he even returned as a saint. What a blessing! But many of the saints of the various forces understood something in their hearts. The fourth era without a master was a golden age. There were countless geniuses, heroes, and favored by the heavens. These people would only appear once in 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 years. But now, they had all appeared in this era. Obviously, it was normal, if there were no accidents. The fourth era would be the era of the explosion of sages. Similarly, the number of fallen sages would be beyond the imagination of ordinary people. At this moment, the sages of the top forces of the legendary continent were thinking about how they should view the City of Dawn. More importantly, what was the message that Rogers had sent to them? What did he see in the impassable continent? Would the problem of the impassable continent spread? That would be terrible. But no matter what, they would definitely go to the City of Dawn for a gathering. After all, Rogers had become a sage. Both sides are on equal footing. Let's not talk about these people. Inside the Temple of Light, two people looked at each other speechlessly. The Pope of Light glanced at the reluctant Ursula and said, "Go to the City of Dawn on my behalf. I can't be bothered to meet Rogers. He makes it sound like everyone wants to meet a jinx, especially since he has become a sage. Perhaps he can absorb a large part of my luck. Although he can't do it, he must have some kind of artifact with him. If not, it must be the work of the goddess of luck or goddess of misfortune." Everyone thought that Rogers had caused a sage to go missing. But Rogers, who was only at the legendary level, did not have that kind of power. But there were no signs of other people taking action, so others thought so too. But after the Pope of Light reached a higher realm, he seemed to have seen something and concluded that Rogers was not the real cause of the disappearance of the sage. In one sentence, this guy with a big secret had returned. It was very likely that he was one of the reincarnations of the gods. Chapter 5:29. The City of Dawn regained its usual peace. There were even more cheers and chatter. The Lord's nemesis had been suppressed for 10 years. During this period, the magic sanctuary would gradually be devoured by other powers. By then, only the headquarters of the magic sanctuary would be left. After all, the magic sanctuary still had its foundations, with the 9 magic towers for defense, unless a sage came personally ordinary people would not be able to attack the magic sanctuary. However, there was a very worrying thing that happened. The speed at which the martial sages were suppressed was too fast. The spirit palace that he had moved to the sky above the City of Dawn had been seized by the City of Dawn. TSK. It was a huge loss. It could be said that, besides the space ring on the martial sage's hand, all his possessions were in the spirit palace that was thousands of meters high. How much wealth did a sage have? No one could say for sure. However, a martial sage would definitely have a lot of treasures. The various magical materials that he had were probably worth more than a human kingdom. Hence, William watched as Rogers took it away. Then he glanced at him and said in a tone as if he was lecturing a child, "Why do you need so much money? As a professional, you can't rely on external objects if you want to be strong. You have to rely on yourself. Look at me." After Rogers finished speaking, he pondered for a moment. "I rarely use these divine artifacts when I fight, so you just have to cultivate obediently." Oh, the prince was in a daze. He recalled when Rogers had suppressed the martial sage. Besides using the divine weapons, did he use other methods? He had thought that Rogers would be more generous. Even if he did not give him a few divine weapons, he would at least give him one. He did not expect that. This fellow's stinginess was simply beyond his imagination. His shamelessness was truly breathtaking. He had almost caught up to him. More importantly, when Rogers saw the beast god necklace, his eyes lit up. Fortunately, Rogers did not say, "Take out the necklace and let me take a look." Then he took out the necklace and said, "This is my method." Everyone returned to the City of Dawn. Ever since the City Lord's palace had been destroyed, the reconstruction work had begun. William was a nostalgic person, so he asked the construction team to rebuild the City Lord's mansion according to its previous appearance. His City Lord's mansion only had 3 floors. It was not the tallest building in the City of Dawn, and it was not the best looking either. But because this was where he lived, it was the most dazzling building in Dawn. It was the most admirable building. The height of the mountain did not matter. As long as there was an immortal, it would be spiritual. Water doesn't have to be deep. It's only when there's a dragon. This was an obvious truth. With his current status and identity, he no longer needed any buildings to set himself off. According to His Royal Highness, keeping a low profile was the best way to show off. That night, the citizens of the City of Dawn held banquets to celebrate the City of Dawn's victory. The players also started to eat and drink. In the temporary City Lord's mansion, William had a rare family banquet. It was the first family banquet in his life. There are not many people at this family banquet, only 5 in total. William, his parents in this body, Moses, and Princess Annie, who had hurried back, were there. It had to be said, the banquet was like a battlefield. William vaguely felt an inexplicable killing intent on his plate. Moses and Annie were on his left and right, so they quickly filled his plate with food. Fortunately, dinner time passed very quickly. William had a large appetite. No matter how much food the two of them placed on his plate, he could eat as much as he wanted. He managed to resolve this small problem by a narrow margin. When the servant girl removed all the plates from the table, everyone finally had a chance to drink and chat. Rogers ignored the 2 women beside William. He softly said, "Is William going to be an adult soon?" William was stunned. He suddenly felt 2 killing intents on his left and right. He could not help but glance at Rogers. "Were you sure you were the biological father of this body? Would you like to test the blood test?" However, Rogers was not talking about marriage. The stronger the professional, the longer their lifespan. Marriage was never a problem. He just said in a deep voice, "You'll be an adult in 4 years. What I mean is, if possible, it's best if you reach the legendary realm before you become an adult." "What's the difference?" William drank a mouthful of wine. He was a little puzzled. In terms of luck, any living creature that reaches the legendary realm before adulthood will be favored by the heavens. Rogers did not hesitate and directly expressed his opinion. The prince nodded thoughtfully, but in his heart, he did not care. "I can't change my luck in this lifetime." It could even be said that he had already adapted to it. He had even created an indestructible body for it. Hence, it was not a bad thing for him to have low luck. Furthermore, in version 4, 0. He would definitely reach the legendary realm. At most, he would be 27 years old. Then he, the cheapskate father, gave Alice a look and took Mo and Annie away to prevent his two-timing son from failing. At this moment, Rogers looked deeply at William. Suddenly, his gaze turned solemn as he said, "I'm sorry. I didn't expect that I would absorb your luck before you were born." William had already learned of some of Rogers' tricks from Moses. He pretended to be magnanimous and waved his hand. "It's nothing. A real man has to forge ahead in difficult situations and overcome obstacles. Tribulations are nothing. Just give me a few divine weapons as compensation." William pondered for a while and was about to say this. However, Rogers spoke faster. He immediately widened his eyes and said, "You're right. William, you don't know. I'm quite envious of your luck, where you can't even drink cold water. I feel that if I'm born with bad luck, my life will definitely be more colorful. There will always be enemies looking for trouble, and I can continuously challenge and level up. It's a pity that I'm born with the ability to absorb other people's luck. Those unlucky fellows who want to kill me often die in accidents on the way here. Only when they become sages can they completely control their luck. Sigh, it's unbearable. I'm so envious." After he finished speaking, Rogers even had a wronged expression on his face. When William saw this scene, he gradually fell into deep thought. His heart was in pain. It was a heart-wrenching pain, but he was not convinced. He wanted to turn the tables. He believed that he had never lost to anyone in his verbal skills. Hence, he compared their looks. TSK, TSK. The difference was like heaven and earth. He understood why his mother liked him. It was all set off by the divine equipment. It was too dazzling, and he laughed mischievously. "Yes, father, you have such ordinary features, but you were able to marry mother. I can imagine how good your luck is. Life is not easy. I understand. After all, when I walk by, all the noble ladies on the street will stare at me. This kind of pain is definitely not something you can understand." When he said this, Rogers was also lost in thought. An average-looking Rogers? An ordinary Rogers? That was so infuriating. Ever since he wore all the divine weapons, no one said that he was ordinary. All right, when others looked at him, they would look at his equipment and rarely look at his face. Fortunately, this fellow was his son. Back then, those fellows who said that he was ordinary were all sucked up by him. But Rogers glanced at William. There was really nothing to suck up. It was a waste of time and energy. He could naturally see the luck of others. If one were to compare the luck of an ordinary person, it would be a few golden threads. An ordinary professional would have about a dozen golden threads. A genius professional would have about a few hundred. But what about Annie? Her head was emitting golden light. She had a little bit of his demeanor in the past, but it was a pity that she was still far from it. But William, he widened his eyes and looked for a long time. Finally, in a pure white light, he found 6 hidden, small golden particles. 3 of them were still floating. It seemed that someone had given him some luck. TSK, TSK, it's a tragic sight. When Rogers thought of this, he was no longer angry. Instead, he felt a little pity for this fellow. Hence, he changed a topic that had nothing to do with looks. "In a few days, I will discuss something with those sages. You don't have to participate, but I have to tell you something in advance." "What is it?" William raised his eyebrows. "After I finish my discussion with those old fellows, I will leave for a period of time. Your mother will stay here. But you don't have to worry. The City of Dawn is a power that you created. You just have to develop it step by step. You can also use my name to become a top power. You don't have to worry about sages attacking you. But you have to understand that even if I'm the chosen one, I might die. Only when you become a sage will you not have to rely on others." His Royal Highness glanced at him and nodded. "I understand. Even someone as handsome as me will have a shameful part of them not liking me." Roger's mouth twitched. As a son, couldn't William show some concern for him? It was so superficial to talk about his looks all the time. So he said, "Aren't you worried about where I will go?" William raised his eyebrows and grinned. "Men with ordinary looks are usually luckier. Nothing will happen to them. I believe in you, father." 3 black lines appeared on Roger's forehead. Sure enough, The son in front of him had a lot of opinions about him. 2 out of 3 sentences were about his appearance. He was very unhappy, but he still said, "I've been fighting in the impassable continent for more than 10 years. I've almost become a lunatic many times. But from the day I became a sage, I felt that this continent was extraordinary. I'm sure it's the same for the fantasy continent. That's why I came back this time to look for some idle saints to follow me to the fantasy continent. I don't know when I'll be back, so take care of your mother at home." "Oh, I will." William nodded expressionlessly. "Ahem, William. Oh, I feel that our relationship can improve. Or rather, what do you want as a gift?" After Rogers said this, he felt a chill in his heart. He was done for. As expected, William's eyes turned cold. He hurriedly said, "Father, you're so kind. I knew that you would leave behind 7 or 8 divine weapons for me to protect my mother. Forget about the gift. I'm still young, and I'm a director. How can I ask for a gift?" The god of armor was very distressed at this moment, but he suddenly raised his eyebrows and suddenly said, "Oh yes, you're still too young. You're not an adult yet, and your mind is not mature enough. Then I'll hand over the spirit palace of a martial sage to Moses. She'll take care of your mother. After all, you're only an epic professional. Even if I give you 7 or 8 divine weapons, you won't be able to hold them." Okay, I'm going to cultivate." Rogers ran away quickly. William glanced at him and touched his chin. God's luck, divine weapons? Gods? There must be some relationship between the 3. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so stingy. But no matter what, he had won this conversation. Luck? Oofed. You're so lucky, and yet you can make so many enemies. So what if my luck is low? I can make a lot of friends just by looking at my face. Don't talk about my looks when we meet in the future, especially when I reach the legendary level. I'll let you know what it means to be a handsome god. William felt that reaching the legendary level would be a breakthrough point. When that time came, his handsomeness would reach a new level. Chapter 530. Ever since the martial sage had been suppressed, the magic sanctuary, which was located in the 6th and 7th level of the legendary continent, had started to withdraw their defensive line. The City of Dawn's counterattack against the 3 top powers was also carried out at lightning speed, not to mention anything else. The 4 powers joined forces and managed to reduce the magic sanctuary's territory by 1/3 in just 2 days. Of course, this included the branches that the magic sanctuary had given up, but a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Even if the City of Dawn, the Temple of Light, the Mercenary Guild, and the Palace of Darkness joined forces, the other neutral camps could only watch. Even if the meat was right in front of their mouths, they could only watch. Even if the martial sage had been suppressed, he was not dead. After 10 years, the martial sage would break the seal. By then, it was uncertain if the Lord of the City of Dawn would be able to kill the martial sage personally. Now that the City of Dawn had the support of a sage, they had nothing to fear. But what about the other powers? Moreover, the magic sanctuary was still very powerful. It had more than 20 legendary professionals. Ever since the martial sage had been sealed, there had been some internal strife among the legendary professionals of the magic sanctuary. However, the great elder Shun too had a godly weapon. Even if he could not defeat Moses, he could still deal with others. Therefore, it was fine if the neutral camps with sages attacked. But if the neutral camps with only 1 or 2 legendary professionals dared to interfere, it would be strange if they did not get beaten up. In particular, not all powers were like the City of Dawn. Not only did they have the backing of the powerful elves, but their biological father was also a powerful sage. 2 days passed by very quickly. William did not leave the City of Dawn because the sages of the other powers were about to arrive. Even if he could not participate, if the sages were to come, they would naturally send their subordinates. William could not speak directly to the sages, but he could still get close to the legendary professionals. As for the counterattack against the magic sanctuary, he could rest assured and leave it to Lautner to command. Furthermore, Sarimas had successfully become a legendary and could transform into the Time Dragon. This sudden super combat power was simply a tyrant on the battlefield. Without 2 or 3 legendary professionals, it would be difficult to fight against him. As for Odin, naturally, he used Moses' teleportation portal to return to the Middle-earth to continue collecting faith. In just a few months, Asgard, which he had created, had more than 5 million people within its territory, and 2 million people had become his believers. Among them, there were more than 3 million players who had long since become his fanatics, which caused Odin's divinity value to soar. With the expansion of the temples, the believers who prayed in the temples could bring him more faith. In the absence of a temple, the maximum number of faith points a believer could provide was 10. However, under the shrine's amplification, the maximum limit was actually 50 points. As such, he had now accumulated 1% divinity value, and all his attributes had increased by 0.3%. However, Odin's actions in the Midland continent naturally attracted the attention of many factions, and some conspiracies were slowly approaching. For the time being, William did not know. Even if he knew, there was nothing he could do. The path to becoming a god in this era was very difficult. He already knew that someone would come to test Odin's strength. It was just a matter of whether they came early or late. Finally, on the 4th day of the arrival of Roger's Providence, the conference hall of the City of Dawn was occupied. Even William, the city lord, could not enter. He could only chat with the legendary leaders of various factions. This was because the conference hall was filled with sages. Not only the top neutral factions, but the 3 human empires, the elves, and the winged sages who were stationed in the legendary continent had also come. Prince William, aren't you going in to take a look? After all, this is the City of Dawn, and you're the city lord. I think that even if you push the door open and enter, the sages won't say much. A legendary leader of a human empire teased. William laughed. Why don't you try and see if it's easy to break through the sage barrier? TSK. You speak as if you can't break through the sage barrier. William's mouth twitched. He did not want to continue arguing with them, so he shouted, Come, let's drink. I heard that you guys could drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk. Today, I'll let you have a good taste of the wine that the chosen ones have. It's very exciting. Okay, I'll drink. A legendary leader of the mercenary palace glanced at the wine cup and gulped it down. His expression changed drastically, and he spat out the wine. He roared furiously. You call this wine? It smells like horse piss. That's right. The chosen ones call it beer. If you don't believe me, taste it carefully. It smells very good. William also gulped down the wine. Only then did the rest let their guard down. After all, even if this was the City of Dawn, it did not mean that this Ned B star could fool them with horse piss. But then again, it seemed that they had drunk horse piss before. Otherwise, why would they say that it smelled like horse piss? Very soon, many legendary leaders gradually adapted to the taste of beer. Their eyes lit up. They seemed to be the kind of people who could not live without wine. When they saw new wine, they wanted to drink until they vomited. They kept asking about the price of the beer. Subsequently, William smiled and talked to them about the new business. The brewing speed of beer was much faster than red wine and fruit wine. If there were no accidents, the sales volume of beer would not be low. It should bring a large sum of money to the City of Dawn. As for the player who provided the recipe for Harley beer, William only gave him 30,000 gold coins and happily sent him away. Meanwhile, inside the conference hall, there were a total of 10 people. They were seated equally because the sages represented the highest combat power in the gods' continent. They seemed to be afraid of Roger's luck, but they did not want him to suck away their luck. Let's not talk about anything else. If he didn't suck your luck to death, just a little bit, would you fight with him, or would you take it seriously? It was not worth it. Therefore, the other sages did not want to bother with Rogers. They were not as popular as William. The sages who could represent the various factions were all famous experts. Any one of them could make the legendary continent tremble. The war-ending Empire, Grigory, the Master of Gold, was the Dean of the Magic Academy. There was no need to talk about this brother. He was in existence in the epic-ranked titled Warrior Conference. He was also the most bored and troublesome saint in the war-stopping empire. The Frost Empire, the chief commander of the Ranger Legion, Ice Ranger Ike. This female ranger sage was still single. Her suitors ranged from the legendary continent to the Middle-earth continent. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also a female sage. She was very charming. Just by sitting here, many sages were sending signals of courtship with their eyes. The Sunset Empire, the Pope of the Sunset Sage Hall, Sunfall. The Sunset Empire was not only the oldest human empire in the legendary continent, but it also had a Sunset Sage Hall that was responsible for assassinating, suppressing rebellions, and exterminating dark creatures. This organization had great power. If it was not under the Sunset Empire, it could be classified as a top power. The highest leader of the Sage Hall, the Pope, did not have a name. He only had the nickname Sunfall. No one knew how powerful he was. He had lived for many years. This was because before the Sunset Empire was founded, the Sunset Sage Hall had already appeared, and the Saint Sunfall had also held the position of Pope for countless years. Then, it was the representative of the three elves, the Snow Elf Queen. Next, the Deputy Temple Lord of the Temple of Light, Ursula, was dozing off in his seat. He was snoring loudly. The Deputy Leader of the Mercenary Guild, Brooks, was known as the Sacred Shield. This sage looked short and exquisite, but everyone knew that this guy was a super meat shield. Even if half of the sages present attacked him at the same time, he could still resist for a long time. The Temple Lord of the Palace of Darkness came in person. He also did not have a name, but his name was the belief of countless dark professionals. Everyone called him the Dark God. At this time, he was wearing a black robe, sitting quietly with his eyes closed, surrounded by black gas. There were only two people left. The first was the dwarf saint who had guarded the 7 dwarf kingdoms for countless years. He was the last saint of the Lonely Mountain Empire, an old guy who lived in seclusion. It could even be said that the 7 dwarf kingdoms did not know that there was a dwarf saint protecting them. They did not know that this saint was the key to guarding the gate of the Lonely Mountain from being opened by other saints. This dwarf also did not have a name, but he had a surname, Hammer. That was the same surname as Odom. During the chaos of the Lonely Mountain, he was in seclusion to break through to the Saint Realm. When he stepped into the Saint Realm, the Lonely Mountain Empire had been divided into 7 dwarf kingdoms. Since then, he had no intention of showing up, nor did he want to fight against the rebellious clans. He only wanted to use his last ability to protect the inheritance of the dwarf race. Hatred? It was long gone. However, Odom Hammers had once again ignited his fighting spirit, and now he had the intention to leave the mountain. In other words, he had always been waiting for a king to appear in the 7 dwarf kingdoms and restore the glory of the Lonely Mountain. The second was the feather saint who guarded the legendary continent, Holy Angel Kilyuan. This holy angel, who had never retracted his wings, looked like an unknown saint, but no one would be foolish enough to underestimate him. At this time, the owner of the City of Dawn, Rogers Godluck, finally smiled and said, "Everyone is here. Let the meeting begin." Many of the saints turned to look at him, wanted to learn some secrets of the impassable realm continent from him. However, Rogers looked at the crowd and said in a low voice, "I'm not threatening anyone. I was rejected by the old Blackleaf Elves, so I could only go to the desperate continent and try to step into the Saint Realm in a short period of time. I've been gone for more than 20 years, and I've never given William any love, but he performed very well. I don't say it, and I don't express it in my actions, but he's my son. Now, I've returned as a saint. As long as he develops the City of Dawn within the rules, whoever dares to break the rules and find trouble with him will be finding trouble with me. And finding trouble with me, I'll let him die, no matter who it is, no matter if he's a god or a saint. Remember my words. I, Rogers, mean what I say." Everyone's expression changed slightly. Who was he trying to scare? He had just become a saint a few days ago, and he dared to suppress a weak martial sage? However, Rogers was not done. He just sneered at Bernice and said, "Tell the old Blackleaf elf that I'll go and settle the score with him tomorrow. If nothing goes wrong, even if William's luck is very low, he should have no problem living in the Dark Knight City, right? He was expelled from the Dark Knight City under the command of that old bastard, right? With William's little luck, he actually allowed him to inherit my lousy little territory? If it wasn't for his luck, he would have been dead. He could have taken advantage of my absence to plot against Alice and my son. Now that I'm back, we'll settle the score bit by bit. No one can escape. You. Bernice's face was cold, and a layer of frost appeared in the entire conference hall. Why are you angry? I didn't say that I'm going to find trouble with the snow elves. Rogers ignored Bernice's gaze. He then officially said, the desperate continent, everyone understood. This wasn't about the matters of the impassable continent. This was about showing off his power and helping his son vent his anger. All right, we'll watch and see how you're going to find trouble with that old fellow. The biological father of the Blackleaf Elven King. He was a super old saint who had entered the saint state in the middle of the Second Era. Outsiders called him the Dawn King. Chapter 531. The 10 Sages Conference lasted from noon to night. They were not interested in staying in the City of Dawn for a night. After Rogers finished talking about the impassable continent, they left. Of course, Rogers not only warned the big shots not to break the rules and cause trouble for his son, he also told them a lot of secrets about the impassable continent. He also planned to travel to the fantasy continent to see what the two continents had in common. The 9 saints had many considerations, among which the dwarves and elves expressed no interest. They had fewer sages and could not spare manpower to seek death. However, the 3 human empires, the Serafkin, and the Mercenary Palace were very interested. It was about the fantasy continent. All the sages had a certain understanding of it. Although it was not as terrifying as the impassable continent, there were still some forbidden areas that could kill sages. Fortunately, most of the places were safe. Every year, some people would go to the legendary continent for training. Usually, Ursula would open the door himself. However, the Temple of Light did not express whether they would go, but the Pope of Light definitely did not have any thoughts. To him, there were no so-called forbidden areas in the God's continent. The secrets he knew were far more than anyone could imagine. It was just that this young pope had never told anyone about them. As for the Deputy Temple Lord, Ursula, before he died, he would definitely not take the risk to go anywhere. There was no need to think about it. In fact, they were more interested in how Rogers would cause trouble for the Blackleaf elves tomorrow. The next morning, the sun had risen halfway through the dawn. Rogers was about to leave. William came to send him off with mixed feelings. He did not know that his father was going to the Blackleaf Forest. He thought that he was going to the fantasy continent. He's so busy. He's already a sage. Isn't it good to be a homebody? He's so busy all day. William complained in his heart. He felt that Rogers was so busy that he seemed to have some kind of motivation to become stronger. But William had not figured out what attributes and endowments Rogers had. His father was more mysterious than he had imagined. Rogers Godluck looked at the sun in the east and turned to William. He smiled and said, I won't leave you any sacred weapons, but the sword used to suppress a martial sage is not bad. If you become a martial sage in 10 years, you can pull it out. 10 years. William's mouth twitched. It was not a long time, but it was not short either. Yes, 10 years. Rogers continued. Don't worry, the fantasy continent isn't that deadly to me. It can even be said that it's a treasure land for me now. His Royal Highness raised an eyebrow. Could it be that you're going to look for those creatures made of spiritual power to absorb the luck? Rogers did not explain. He continued, Don't think that you have a good relationship with the saints of the elves. In fact, they have always had a problem with your human bloodline. Otherwise, they would have killed their way over to save you. William's expression changed. He could not help but say, But the Blackleaf Elven King, he's a legend. Could his words control those saints? Hearing this, the prince could not help but sigh. In the end, he was still too weak. Or in other words, the elven saint had invested in him, and the key was that he had to bear it himself and survive. Only then would he have the intention to invest in him. From the beginning to the end, they had always treated him as an outsider. As for those investors that he had pulled over, most of them were actually because of his handsome talent. Otherwise, how could he have this kind of ability? Subsequently, Rogers extended his hand and gently tapped on the spot between William's eyebrows. William wanted to turn his head, but he could not move. He felt his mind go blank, like a drop of water falling into a calm lake, causing waves. After a long time, When William opened his eyes, he could not help but take out a mirror to look at himself. There was a faintly discernible red between his eyebrows. Then he glanced at the information panel. He immediately swallowed his saliva. Prompt: Rogers of Providence has left 10 drops of sage blood essence in your body. Prompt: you have the bloodline of Rogers of Providence. You can easily activate the blood essence for your own use. Prompt: each drop of blood essence can be activated once, or multiple drops, or 10 drops of blood essence can be activated at the same time. Prompt: if you do not have time to use it, the blood essence will be automatically activated before you die. Prompt: there are no side effects when using these 10 drops of blood essence. His Royal Highness was stunned. He looked around but couldn't find Rogers anymore. Perhaps this is the best gift a father can give to his child? William had mixed feelings, but he quickly regained his composure. He sought out Moses to exact revenge on the magic sanctuary. Meanwhile, Rogers of Providence, who looked pale, had arrived at the Blackleaf Elves' capital. Before he could get within 10,000 meters of the capital, an old man with an ordinary aura slowly appeared in the sky and blocked his way. He looked at Rogers with some fear, but there was also a sense of helplessness. You walked out by yourself. Rogers glanced around and felt the aura of the sages. They seemed to be secretly observing him. This old man was the Dawn King, the previous Blackleaf Elven King. He could also be called William's grandfather. The Dawn King sighed and replied, William is living a good life, and the Blackleaf Elves are very supportive of him. Are you going to pursue the past? What a joke. What does his life have to do with you? Didn't you want to kill him back then? Don't tell me it's because of training. Can't you see how low his luck is? Look at the mentally retarded princes of the Blackleaf Elves. How many of them are promising? The old Elven King's expression darkened when he heard this. But Rogers of Providence said in a cold voice, I can understand your plans back then. It's because he's a half-elven and has human blood. You're afraid that he has my abilities. You're afraid that he's also a prince. If he's capable, he'll definitely inherit the throne that should have been inherited by your grandson. Isn't that so? Roger's words were like pearls, and every word struck a chord in his heart. However, the Dawn King's expression did not change at all. He just looked at him expressionlessly and sneered, seeing that your aura is so unstable, and because of Alice, I gave face to a new saint like you. Do you really think you're invincible now? Rogers twisted his neck and smiled. I'm definitely not invincible. But I can beat you to death. You're courting death. The old Elven King, who was originally old, glared angrily. His body shone with divine light. He pulled out his sword, and the cold light shone like the light of dawn, illuminating the entire Blackleaf forest. The leaves within a radius of 100,000 meters swayed, and the momentum was overwhelming. Countless people in the Blackleaf Elven Kingdom raised their heads and looked at the dazzling sky. They felt it. The old Elven King made his move. But Rogers looked at the sword approaching him, but he did not make any defensive or offensive moves. Puff! He let the sword light slash his chest. It tore the divine artifact armor on his body. It tore his chest and blood gushed out. It tore the sky behind him, and a black line that was 10,000 meters long appeared. Then, Rogers clenched the hilt of his sword and shouted angrily, I'll take your sword, and I'll pay you back 3 times. Slash, slash, slash. In an instant, 3 dazzling sword lights pierced the sun, as if heaven and earth were being torn apart by the sword lights. They slashed at the old Elven King, who was blocking his head with his sword. Rumble. The first wave of saber chi shattered the long sword. The second sword energy forcefully slashed a bloody mark on his head. The third sword energy shattered his head, causing his body to smash into the ground and create a huge abyss. Rogers did not attack again. He looked coldly at the old Elven King, who was gradually recovering, and said in a deep voice, The first slash was for my wife. I want 1,000 years of your life. The second slash was for my son. I want 1,000 years of your luck. The third slash was for me. I don't like you, so I'll double the price. Puffed. The old Elven King, whose head had just recovered, spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Rogers with an uncertain expression. He was too strong. Peak Saint. Or rather, this guy had too many divine artifacts on him. This was what allowed him to step into the Saint realm. And he had already become a Peak Saint. Then, Rogers sneered and said, "You know what my surname is? Other than my son, the position of the Blackleaf Elven King. Anyone else will only lead the Blackleaf Elves to destruction. That's all I have to say." As soon as he finished speaking, Rogers left without looking back, leaving behind a group of saints who were hiding in the dark and at a loss of what to do. He was really strong, because if the saints were divided, there were a few levels. Early, middle, high, peak. Among them, early stage saints were the weakest. If the Chaos City Lord and the current Moses used all their trump cards, they would be able to fight with this kind of person for a while. Although they would definitely not be able to win, they would be able to escape. Back then, martial sages were people who relied on divine artifacts to explode with the power of a middle saint. The old elven king of the Blackleaf Elves and the great elder of the Moonlight Elves were all experts with the power of a high saint. And Rogers had just stepped into the saint realm, but he had already stepped into the peak of the saint realm. He was simply unbelievably strong, especially since many saints were not fools. Even if Rogers was wearing divine artifacts, the key was that he had that kind of talent and combat power. Or rather, he had at least stepped into the high end of the saint realm and relied on those divine artifacts to give him the power of a peak saint realm. But it had to be said, this guy had way too many divine artifacts. For a normal saint, although the gap between the early, middle, and high saints had gradually widened, they could still use divine artifacts to close the gap. But the battle power of a peak saint, other high-level saints did not have that many divine artifacts even if they wanted to go up. Now that Rogers had directly stepped into this realm with a body full of divine artifacts, it was simply smashing his face with those divine artifacts.